Welcome to Fiction Audiobooks. If you enjoy the content, like and subscribing would be greatly appreciated. If you have any recommendations for novels, comment below.
Please join my Patreon at https://www.patreon.com/fictionaudiobook.
Chapter 211, Chapter 196. Enjoy. I will post 2 chapters this coming Sunday. David Lance POV. I had successfully recruited the remaining Green Lanterns into my side, all after having defeated their best warriors on a test made by the leader, said. Now, all that was left for me to do was to recruit the remaining Lantern Corps. At least the ones that I knew I could convince to help. Fear, rage, and hope. If I played my cards right, I could probably convince them to work together. None of them were evil, or their methods differed a lot, but their goal was essentially the same, fighting criminals. Even Atrocitus, who after revenge for what the Green Lanterns had done to him, would still dedicate some of his time to hunting criminals. Wyaska, can you locate the leaders of the other corps like you did with Slade? I asked Wyaska, who until now had been meditating, with Dexstar by her side. I can, Wyaska nodded, her eyes still closed. It's not difficult really, once you know what you're looking for, it's all a matter of focusing. I found Slade by focusing on finding willpower alone, not that hers was the strongest one around, but it was around what I expected from the likes of an own. Considering I defeated Slade and her warriors with ease, it made sense Slade wasn't the strongest source of willpower. I knew for a fact that Wyaska probably had more willpower than me, at least that much I considered, so with that being the case it was more than likely that others with stronger wills existed. There's always a bigger fish in the sea. Who's the closest one? I asked. Rage, Wyaska answered, opening her eyes for the first time. He's actually coming this way, how convenient. How convenient indeed. Should I prepare myself for combat? I asked, looking at the sky. Prepare? You should always be ready for combat, no matter the situation, Wyaska replied with a sigh. It seems that I failed as a teacher with you in many aspects. I rolled my eyes at her. Need I remind you we only trained for a damn week? Heck, the fact that I survived you that long is a win in my book. You struggled to survive my training because you were weak, and still are, just, less weak than before, Wyaska shot back without missing a beat. I really hated this old lady. Well, not really, but yeah, I hated her. Bolt. I have come for your head. The unmistakable roar of Atrocitus filled the air around us, shaking the very core of our environment. I suppose you don't need me to announce that has arrived, right? Wyaska said, giving me a slight smirk. And please, do hurry with this, guy, while I'm sure you enjoy wasting your time, I didn't sign up to see you play with your food. It's unbecoming of a warrior seeing you play like that. You can always fight him yourself, I shot back. You know what they say, if you want something done right, do it yourself. A proposition I knew Wyaska wouldn't take. Very well, Wyaska chuckled. Say what now? Loud thing, it seems I am to be your opponent, Wyaska announced, walking towards Atrocitus. Leave, and you may live. That was all Atrocitus had managed to say before Wyaska delivered an earth-shattering slap on him, defeating him in one strike. And that's how you deal with inferior warriors, as quickly and efficient as possible, Wyaska said, walking back to her meditation spot. Batman POV. Injustice. Black Bolt was a threat, an enemy I wanted to deal with as soon as it was possible, but he wasn't the only one. Dealing with Darkseid and Brainiac were priorities in the scale of things. Black Bolt could wait. Concessions had to be made. For now. Eventually I would get back on his case. Right now, however, that was out of the table. Batsy, what are we doing here? Harley asked, tapping her fingers on the window of the Batcar. Waiting. With Superman and his regime gone at the hands of Bolt, many had returned to their places of origin, looking to hide from the world. One of them was Aquaman. He had sided with the regime when it was still in place, and just like Bolt he had crimes to answer for, nevertheless, his strength was needed and because of it, I wanted to recruit him into the war against Darkseid. I knew Aquaman wasn't exactly a fan of my person right now, so I was also aware he wouldn't be an easy recruitment. But if there's one thing that can make him join this cause, if the looming threat Darkseid represents to his kingdom. But waiting for what? Santa. Harley whined. We're here to recruit Aquaman, I said, my voice steady and unwavering. Harley gave me a surprised look, her lips slightly parted in shock. And here I thought I was the crazy one. Are you sure you want to do that? He hates you right now. I am aware, just as I am aware he loves his people more than anything else. Which is exactly what we need to tap into if we want to get him on board with us, I responded without hesitation. I'm sure once he hears what we have to say he'll come around. I could feel Harley looking at me like she wanted to know more about the plan, but she didn't push it. Okay Batsy, I'm with you. I just hope he's willing to listen. Drowning isn't exactly fun, she said with a sigh, before turning around. And here he comes. It isn't. It seems you are wiser than Batman, Harley, Arthur said, slowly coming out of the water, one step at a time, trident at hand. You think? Ah shucks. Thanks. Harley giggled. Chapter 212, Chapter 197. Enjoy. I will post 2 chapters this coming Sunday. David Lance POV. After Wyaska defeated Atrocitus, I waited for him to wake up, and when he did, I had a talk with him. In that talk, I explained the situation in detail, and needless to say, he wasn't all that eager to help me at first. But after a lot of talking and yelling from his part, he accepted to join this war, stating that he would be my ally, temporarily, and that one day he would claim my life. I nodded at his threat. Death would have me when it earned me, and Atrocitus wasn't going to be the one to deliver such. With Atrocitus out of the way, 2 corps remained. The Yellow Lanterns, and the Blue Lanterns. Where next? I asked Wyaska. This is your war, so it's your call, Wyaska replied. My war. I suppose in a way it was. Yellow it is then, I sighed. With the help of Wyaska, I flew towards the location of the remaining Yellow Lanterns were hiding at, hoping that they would listen to reason and help us in the upcoming battle. Politics wasn't my thing, but I had to adapt if I wanted to increase my odds. As we reached the planet the remaining Yellow Corps were hiding at, I was met with a barrage of yellow energy bolts. Seeing this, I created an energy shield to block their attack. I knew I wasn't liked by them, but for them to be more aggressive than Atrocitus, it was unexpected. From within my shield, I could see the piercing yellow lights of the rings blazing from their hands. It seems you have a bit of work ahead of you, Wyaska chuckled before disappearing out of sight. I sighed, my shield fading as their attack came to stop. I was being surrounded by hundreds, no. Thousands. It seems a peaceful approach is not an option. With each passing second, the Yellow Lanterns continued to close in around me, each and every single one of them brandishing their weapons, their constructs. Then, without any further delay, or in between, the silent atmosphere of space was filled with shrieks of rage and battle cries as all of them attacked me at once. For Sinestro. Taking a deep breath, I remained still waiting for their strikes to come, and when they did, I moved deftly through them all, dodging and weaving with remarkable precision. With every shift of my body, I was like a ghost slipping between their blows, leaving the lanterns frustrated and bewildered in my wake. I didn't come for a fight, I declared, as I continued to evade them. Yet no matter how much I tried to remain peaceful in my endeavor, my words didn't reach them, if anything. Taking a deep breath, I closed my eyes, feeling the warm energy flowing through my body. As I opened them again, I was greeted with the sight of thousands of yellow lights surrounding me. Sighing, I spread my arms out and let out a whisper that echoed throughout the entire area, consuming everything on its path. The Yellow Lanterns were caught off guard as they were engulfed in this blazing inferno of energy I had unleashed with a single whisper, their fear powerless to stop it. In a matter of seconds, all of the Yellow Lanterns had been knocked down, leaving thousands of bodies to aimlessly float around the whims of space. I take it we won't recruit them, Wyaska commented. No, I nodded, using my rings to take one of the yellow rings from one of the unconscious lanterns. Confirming first the alien I was stealing from was able to survive the vacuum of space without the ring. Collecting the rings. Wyaska asked, looking at the rings with a hint of dislike. In time they will become useless trinkets for you, I hope you know that. I will use them until I no longer need them, I replied without missing a beat. Every ring represented something I didn't want to remember from this accursed world, my rage, my lack of hope, my fear, and my tamed will. I didn't want them, as useful as they had been, I hated them, nevertheless I would keep them. As reminders. Let's go, I said. Wyaska smiled. Where next? To Earth, I will leave recruiting the Blue Lanterns to said, I'm done with this, I replied. Besides, I still have my army to recover. The one Darkseid gave you, Wyaska replied. You wouldn't be the first one to fight him with an army of his own creation, I wonder if you'll be the first one to defeat him. I intend to be, I replied, clenching my fists. Good, Wyaska said. Unknown POV. Apocalypse. In the halls of Darkseid's castle, 2 figures walked down a hall, one of them tall and imposing, the other looking like a harmless old lady. They were Darkseid and Granny Goodness. My lord, it seems that Little Red is planning to betray you, Granny Goodness said, as she calmly walked beside Darkseid. What do we do? Should I send the Furies after him? No, let him be. Darkseid's eyes glinted dangerously. I am quite content to let him play his little games, for now. Granny Goodness nodded, her expression grim and resolute. As always, Lord Darkseid, she said solemnly. We all serve your will. Darkseid nodded thinly at her words. Indeed you do, he said, as he gazed off into the distance for a moment before turning back to his servant with a thoughtful look on his face. Let us see how far the young god's ambition will carry him. I am intrigued to see how his plans develop. In the meantime, prepare the armies to face Brainiac, that one will die before the week ends, I command it. Granny Goodness gave a tight-lipped smile. Very well, my lord, she said with a slight bow, before turning and walking away, eager to carry out Darkseid's orders. Darkseid watched her go, his expression unreadable. Evil versus destruction. He smiled thinly as the thought of it crossed his mind, and then continued walking in silence. Chapter 213, Chapter 198. Enjoy. I will post 2 chapters this coming Sunday. There was once a being, known as Olethros. Olethros abandoned his realm and his responsibilities hundreds of years ago. The reason for this was the onset of the Age of Reason, a dark time that culminated in the invention of the atomic bomb. Olethros, disgusted by this, was unwilling to remain, to be responsible for the destruction this would cause, and therefore left his post forever. There are few who remember him now, but the tale of his existence still lingers. It is a tale of sorrow and regret. Eventually, however, just as the tale of Olethros was almost forgotten, a new being emerged, an anomaly, a being blessed with unnatural power and strength. The day of his birth was like no other. From the very moment he opened his eyes, it was clear that he possessed something different, something unheard of in the realm. Unbeknownst to him, to everyone but a selected few, he was connected to something greater than himself, a source of immense power that resonated within him at all times. Unknown POV. A pale girl with black hair made her way through a field of wildflowers, in the sky the sun shining brightly and casting a hue of yellow over the flora. The breeze blew softly, playing in her hair, she smiled. The sweet smell of the flowers wafting up to her nose being almost too much to bear, they were like delicate little stars that filled her with an indescribable sense of peace. As she continued down the path, weaving between each perfect flower, she caught sight of a man standing on the other side. He was tall and broad-shouldered, yet gentle and inviting in his posture. His hair was dark brown and he wore simple clothes that fit him perfectly. Even from this distance, she could feel his gaze on her, he had been waiting for her arrival all along. She made her way closer to him, marveling at each step as if they were taking place in slow motion. Long time no see, Death. The girl smiled. Please, we are family Destruction, there's no reason not to call me your sister. Destruction smiled back, and without another word, the two embraced. It has been too long. 50 years since you last visited. He said softly, a warm smile still on his face. Death nodded, breaking the embrace. How have you been? Good. I've been busy lately, so it's not too bad, he said with a chuckle. What about you? How have you been faring? Death smiled sadly. My job is not a fun one. Destruction nodded in understanding. I can relate, and if it's any consolation, I understand what you mean, sister, he said softly. He's growing strong, Death said, breaking the silence that had entered their conversation. Destruction nodded solemnly, his gaze troubled for a moment before he returned it to her. Yes, I can feel it. The two fell silent for a few moments, both lost in their own thoughts and memories as they took in the beauty of the wildflowers around them. Are you scared, brother? Death asked gently. Destruction smiled. No, why would I? You'll be there at my last stop, won't you? Death brushed a hand across her hair. I will. Good, Destruction sighed, his eyes still fixed on the flowers. Samuel sends his regards by the way, Death added before taking a seat beside Destruction. Doesn't he hate that name? Destruction chuckled, giving his sister, Death a side look. He does, Death winked at him. Brainiac POV. Injustice. Defeat was an impossibility. I had developed hundreds of countermeasures to fight against the anomaly and Darkseid. For this very purpose I had created the ultimate body, the ultimate vessel, designed to cybernetically evolve to fight any threat in the most efficient way possible. Now it was all a matter of letting those intellectually inferior creatures attack first. Soon, all in creation will be mine. Raven, Rachel Roth/POV. After having convinced the wizard Shazam to help us, we regrouped with Batman, leaving the old wizard alone to find the new Shazam. Batman had summoned us to the Tower of Fate to tell us about his plans. Once in the Tower of Fate, we found Batman with Aquaman, Dr. Fate, and Harley Quinn. Wasn't she supposed to be a villain? Oh hey. Harley Quinn said with a wide smile on her face. How was your mission, Sugars? What is she doing here? I asked. She's with us, Batman replied. Wow. If he hadn't said that, I would have never figured it out. So. Batsy, any idea where Boltsy is? Harley asked. No, Batman replied. B. Boltsy. What is your relationship with Bolt? I asked, confused. Harley Quinn turned to me, beaming I had asked her a question. Oh, is this girl talking? Yay. Well, girlfriend, let's just say I'm a special kind of friend to him. Special kind of friend. They are fucking, Lucifer interjected with a laugh. Oh, this is a gift that keeps on giving. I see, I replied calmly, when all of a sudden something exploded near me. What an odd occurrence. Did the floor spontaneously combust? Harley asked, narrowing her eyes. And since when are explosions black and bird-shaped? Since you fucked his yet-to-be boyfriend, Lucifer laughed. Oh, Harley chuckled. Well, if it's any consolation, girl, he's very proficient in bed. Mama Harley taught him some stuff. The swimming donkey? Lucifer inquired, as another explosion came out of nowhere. What a second odd occurrence. And, the dirty Harley nodded with a beaming smile. Good, Lucifer nodded, before turning to face me. Isn't this great? We have real reviews saying you didn't pick a mediocre partner. I won't humor you any longer, I replied, walking towards Batman to see what he had in store, as another explosion came, once again, odd. Enough, I don't care what's happening, but it has to stop, Batman growled out. Let her be furry, she's just having a jealous moment, Lucifer replied. Furry? Harley asked between giggles. He's dressed like a bat, Lucifer nodded. Ha 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 ha. Chapter 214, read please. I know many will find this, perhaps not easy to take. But I'm taking today off, and tomorrow, I need a break, a mental health weekend. I am writing, and I will write while I take these days off. But I need to write without the pressure of the update, especially now that I'm starting the sequel to the novel I promised I would make a sequel of. Avatar. I had a rough month last month, and not so good first week in Jan. I even got food poisoning. The point is, I want to write for 2 days without any thoughts of posting here, or how many chapters behind I am from my schedule. For those that know me, I've been doing this for a long time already, and I suppose I was bound to tire my mind eventually. Worry not, most of this is just me being super stressed, not only with my writing but with the things that have happened in my family, like the death of my uncle. I will be back on Sunday, with 2 chapters. I just need 2 days to breathe from the expectations and slowly stack up my chapters. I thank you all for your comprehension. Love you all. Korn. Chapter 215, Chapter 199. David Lance POV. As Wyaska, Dexter, and I flew back to Earth, I could not help but dwell on the bleak future that awaited me, that awaited everyone. I knew it was only a matter of time before Darkseid and Brainiac unleashed his forces against the universe, both trying to destroy each other, and I trying to destroy them. Every time I closed my eyes, I felt a cold dread in the pit of my stomach at the thought. Even then, amongst all my worries and fears, I could not help but marvel at the beauty of our universe as we soared through its depths. There was something about being up in the stars that brought a sense of peace with it, if only for a short while. I guess now that Raven was here, things didn't seem so bad. Worrying won't solve a thing, you know. Wyaska said, interrupting my thoughts. I know, I replied. You know, but what do you intend to do about it? Wyaska said, a faint smile adorning her wearied face. I intend to win, I answered, closing my eyes, exhausted from the long intergalactic voyage, and the worries that haunted my mind. I have a question, why are you fighting this war? Wyaska asked. You have no responsibility with this universe, no chains holding you back. You could leave, and let them fend for themselves, so enlighten this old woman, and tell me, why are you fighting? It is not why I fight for, it's who I fight for, I replied without missing a beat. I see, Wyaska chuckled, understanding my answer. I suppose that's as good as any reason. I was determined to win this war, not for me, not even because I owed this universe that. I was determined to win for Raven, to keep intact the image she has on me. Perhaps it was foolish. But when has the heart ever been wise? Lucifer was right. I loved her. I always have. And I always will. I don't know how I didn't see it sooner, but it was my truth. I loved Rachel, and it was liberating to admit that to myself. Perhaps it was the fact I was risking my life, and the threat this represented made this clear, putting my life into perspective. So, for her, I can be a hero, one last time. I will save this reality, and live to tell the tale, that much I vow to do. Good reason or not, it is the wind beneath my sails, I replied, clenching my fists as we flew through the vacuum of space, ready to take on whatever laid ahead of me. 2 hours later. As I descended to Earth from my long out-of-space journey, I noticed Raven waiting for me at my landing spot. My eyes locked with hers, as I pondered about my feelings, and I looked into her, she looked into me, smiling in a way only she could, barely noticeable, showing there was some kind of connection between us that transcended physical boundaries between us. Her beauty left me speechless, her presence was breathtaking, so strong, yet so delicate. Death's embrace does put things into perspective, I ought to thank her later, if I ever see her again. How was your mission? Raven asked calmly. Good, I replied. Kind of. I managed to recruit the Green Lanterns and the Red Lanterns. The Yellow Lanterns attacked me, and the Blue ones, well, they have no reason to help me. Raven frowned. No reason. And what do you call saving their universe? I cracked a smile at her. You'd be surprised how blind some people can be. Well, 2 core are better than none, Raven sighed, before a smile took over her face. I succeeded in my mission. I managed to get the wizard Shazam to help us. He even said he would make more than one Shazam, something about changing the way things work. Multiple Shazams, I wonder how that will work. As Raven continued to talk about how her mission had gone, the warmth tone melted away my apprehension. Her presence was comforting and filled me with a sense of belonging. Love truly is a confounding emotion, and when it strikes it is hard to ignore and even harder to control. Ray, if you died today, would you regret anything? I asked, cutting her short. You're not dying, Raven shot back, clearly not pleased with my question. I don't plan to, but please humor me for a second. Would you regret anything, at all? I asked once again. A few, Raven said after a while. What about you? Before she could say another word, my arms were around her, brushing her hair with one of my hands, letting it slide beneath my fingers. I would regret not doing this, I said, and before she could withdraw her shocked mind from its far places, I bent back her head across my arms and kissed her, softly at first, and then with a swift gradation of intensity that made her cling to me as the only solid thing in a dizzy-swaying world. It felt like an eternity, our lips connecting in a way that felt like nothing else mattered. For a few brief moments, the air around us hung heavy. Then the moment was gone, our kiss having come to an end. For a single second our eyes locked together, and then we both looked away, suddenly embarrassed by what had happened between us. We had broken the kiss and so much more, destroying everything we had known about us so far. So. I guess that's out of your list, right? Raven asked, a heavy blush on her pale face. Of the things you would have regretted? Yes, but I would regret not doing it again, I replied, my voice shaky, even thought it was coming from my ring. I guess the ring was reading my emotions and acting accordingly. Then don't die, Raven replied, turning around. Chapter 216, Chapter 200. Lucifer Morningstar POV. Don't be a baby, Lucifer, Death chuckled, a cocky smile on her face. I won the bet, so pay up. She. Fine. I muttered, arms crossed as Death brought the clothes she wanted me to wear for a week. Clothes bought in. Hot topic, oh presents just kill me. It's just for a week, you don't have to pout that much, Death giggled. Easy for you to say, you dress up like you gave up on life, I huffed. Well that's just mean, Death sighed. I dress for success, with class, with sexiness in mind. I declared, for I, Lucifer Morningstar, was the best-dressed creature in all of creation. And if you don't believe me, ask the readers, they know I'm the best. Go on, ask them, I'll wait. Did you ask them already? Was I right? Of course I was right, that was a stupid question. It's either you let me dress you for a week, or you let me burn your favorite suit, Death smirked, reminding me of the terms of our bet. Fine, let's get this over with, I sighed, snapping my clothes away, letting Death have her naked canvas to ruin. That's one way to get your clothes off, Death whistled. For your information, I am a master of undressing, I could take your bra off without you even knowing, I nodded, crossing my arms proudly. Please don't, Death replied, taking a step back. Don't flatter yourself, my pale friend, not only you're not my type, but you're like a cousin to me, a little sister I would even say, and this handsome devil isn't from Alabama, I replied, rolling my eyes at her. An incest joke, Death said, giving me a look that said, really? Please, I'm hilarious, and humans will quote everything I say, I grinned at her, giving her a small wink. Maybe, but that joke is factually inaccurate, Death replied, crossing her arms. I mean, if you are to make an incest joke about a state in the US, wouldn't Kentucky be better than Alabama? I mean, their incest rate is higher according to research. First of all, Death, if you have to use scientific research for a joke, it makes the joke terrible, and second of all, why in the name of me, do you know that? I asked, taking a step back from Death. That seems like a rather strange bit of knowledge to carry. Death deadpanned at me. Lucy, we are basically omniscient, you more than me, so we know it all, for the most part, even the parts we would rather not know. Yeah. Being all-powerful, it's not always funny. Especially not when you know how many furries exist at any given time, in any given reality. I have seen things I will never unsee. Oh well, get to dressing me, I sighed, giving Death a smirk. As promised, I'll be your terribly dressed doll. Worry not though, there's nothing I can't pull off. Glad to know your ego is still intact, Death chuckled, bringing up the hot topic clothes. So, do you think the kid will win? I asked, as Death began to do my makeover. No, make under, yeah that's better. Sure, why wouldn't he? Death replied. David Lance POV. After things had cooled down, I talked with Raven about my feelings, asking her out on an official date when all of this was over. She accepted. With that out of the way, we moved to meet with Batman in the Tower of Fate. Once there, we went over our ideas with us, pushing our differences aside for the moment as we provided recommendations and insight based on what we knew. To his credit, he remained calm through it all, showing that at the very least he was determined to see this through before trying to do anything against me. If I could have any other way though, I would have left Batman out of the picture, but as much as I hated him. This version of him at least, he was a genius. One I needed, no. One this universe needed. Planning tactical warfare requires a certain finesse and attention to detail he excelled at. If anyone was through with his plans it was him, even if his idiocy didn't let him see beyond his set imposed rules. I was certain he was one of the very few that would look at our situation from every angle. You said the Yellow Lanterns attacked you, but what about the Blue Lanterns? Batman inquired. I didn't try with them, seeing as they don't have any reason to believe my words, I replied. I will send Dr. Fate to speak with them, Batman replied. He should be able to convince them to join us in this fight. As we continued discussing about our plans, I was struck by how hard this would be, at least for everyone else. I would play the role of Superman in this war, the heavy hitter of the team, but for the rest of the team. The amount of focus and precision they needed to maintain reminded me why waging war can be such a difficult undertaking, where even the smallest miscalculation can result in drastic consequences. Batman, there's something approaching Earth, Dr. Fate announced, at the same time my rings were alerting me of the same. A single ship. A shuttle. Intrigued by this, I asked the rings to elaborate and the answer shocked me. A Kryptonian shuttle, I announced, getting everyone's attention. Depending on who's inside, this can either be bad news or good news. I wonder which one it will be. Batman narrowed his eyes on me. Take a picture, it will last longer, I replied, standing up from my chair. Raven, please open a portal to Alaska. There's a Kryptonian we need to catch before it kills someone. Raven nodded, and before Batman could say another word, we left. I wonder if the person inside this shuttle is Supergirl or someone else. I also wonder how the Kryptonian girl will react once she learns what I did to her cousin. Chapter 217, Chapter 201. Update schedule, Sundays, Tuesdays, and Thursdays. Marvel, Monday, and Friday. I'm slowing down updates because I'm about to start a new novel. By the end of January. But unlike doing what I did with Marvel, I intend to keep updates going just at a slower rate. But seeing as I'm reaching the last arc, I need more time to write the chapters and can't sustain a daily update schedule. The last arc of DC will be back in the Young Justice universe, and will cover the second seasons 2, 3, 4. And in order for me to deliver the ending I want, I need the time to work with the chapters. So, yeah, I need to stop the daily release. But I know you guys want something to read daily, so I might as well go for one of the projects I already have and can sustain with daily chapters. I will also update Marvel 2 times a week, so all in all, I will be both updating more and less. It makes sense to me, I know it's weird. David Lance POV. I moved with Raven to intercept the Kryptonian shuttle, wondering how things would play out. If the person within the shuttle was who I thought it was, I had no doubts in my mind that Batman would use the fact I had killed Superman to manipulate Supergirl into his agenda. Not that she needed much to side with him, I had, after all, killed her only living relative. If anything, Batman would simply push things into the faster lane, so to speak. I wasn't worried though. Supergirl was weaker than Superman, and I had taken care of Superman with relative ease. Sure, I was weaker now, seeing as my rage had dwindled considerably with the object of my hate being gone, but I was still stronger than both Kryptonians. I would have probably had problems dealing with both at the same time as I am now, but individually I had no doubts I could take her on. You know who's inside, Raven commented, as we waited for the shuttle to enter Earth's orbit. I have a good idea of who we are dealing with, I nodded. I missed your mysterious bits of knowledge, Raven smiled. I smiled back, my eyes fixed on the sky. What are we now, Ray? What do you mean? Raven asked calmly. I paused, taking a deep breath. We kissed, and that pretty much says what I feel about you, so. My question is, what are we now? Raven tilted her head, a thoughtful expression clear on her face. I don't know, this is new to me. I never thought I would have a friend, so obviously a boyfriend was out of the range of possibilities. I can relate to that. With my powers, with the burdens I had been given, I never thought I would have a relationship. I suppose we will see what comes next, together. I mean, you did agree to go on a date with me, I replied. Raven chuckled briefly. I did. I wonder what I was thinking when I said yes. That I was unimaginably handsome. I shot back with a playful smirk. I won't dignify that with an answer, Raven rolled her eyes. But you didn't deny it, so I'll take it as a win, I beamed at her, patting on the head. Then, as I continued teasing Raven with pats on the head, the shuttle entered the Earth's atmosphere with a loud boom. Shouldn't we catch that? Raven asked as the shuttle descended toward the ground. I shook my head. Nah, Kryptonians are tough nuts, let her crash. Okay, Raven shrugged. Seconds later, the shuttle crashed into the ground, sending a plume of smoke and dust into the air. Let's go and see who this is then, I said as we flew toward the site of impact. Now to see, Supergirl or not. This would be interesting to say the least. As we approached the crash site, I started to hear clear groans, female by the sound of it. Taking a few steps in, I inspected the broken shuttle, confirming without a shred of doubt that the person inside was Supergirl. Cara Zor-El, surprisingly, she seemed to be injured, which explained why her groans were full of pain. A landing such as this shouldn't have injured her. Unless, her powers were still dormant due to her lack of exposure to a yellow sun. If that was the case, I should have caught her. A Kryptonian without a yellow sun is like any other human, fragile and easy to crush. In fact, if that was the case, it was a marvel she wasn't in a worse state. She seemed to be unconscious now, which was for the best. Having her awaken in this state would only worsen the situation. I glanced at Raven, who nodded in confirmation of my suspicions. Let's get her out of here then, I said as I crouched down next to Supergirl's body. We need to treat her wounds. Raven nodded in agreement, as I carefully lifted Supergirl off the ground and flew off with her to Lucifer's bar. There I would treat her wounds, and once she was in a good state, I would explain the situation myself, telling her what I had done from my own words. We are flying towards Lucifer's bar, why? Raven asked, a small frown on her face. It's the only place Naba wouldn't dare to teleport Batman to, I replied. As much as Lucifer annoyed me sometimes, he was a valuable friend to have. If not the only friend worth having, after all, him backing you up meant certain victory. There were maybe two beings that could go against him, at least that I knew of, those being Gabriel and the Presence. Gabriel being his equal, and the Presence the only one above him. Other than that, he was unmatched, by lengths no one but a few could truly grasp. I suppose that makes sense, should I open a portal there? Raven offered. That's a good idea, I must have been spacing out, I don't know why I didn't ask for that before. Yes, I nodded. Upon arriving at Lucifer's nightclub, Lux, which was located in Los Angeles, we were met with an image we didn't quite expect to see. Lucifer dressed like a gothic stereotype. Why, hello there, Lucifer greeted us, as we both stared at him in disbelief. I know I'm devilishly handsome, but do try not to stare too much. Who am I kidding? I can't deny you both the pleasure of looking at me. I blinked, slowly moving Supergirl to an empty couch in the corner. Okay, I have to ask, why are you dressed like a Hot Topic advertisement? Raven asked, her eyes fixed on Lucifer, a question which made Lucifer twitch. Well, if you must know, I lost the bet I made, your boyfriend over there was the one to initiate the kiss, so, here I am, Lucifer crumbled under his breath, before breaking into a big smile. But this is but a small price to see this love rise from the embers of friendship. Really? I asked, raising an eyebrow. But of course, this is a small price to pay, be that as it may. If you two tell anybody you saw me like this, I will erase you both from existence, Lucifer smiled, a cold detached smile. Charming, I replied. Chapter 218, Chapter 202. Next chapter on Sunday. David Lance POV. Pushing aside Lucifer's outfit, I carried Cara to an empty table to inspect her wounds. Her heart was beating fast, and her breathing was labored. I carefully laid her out on the table, cautious to avoid agitating her further. Once she was all set up, I took her pulse and monitored her breathing to confirm my previous findings, then began the process of cleaning and bandaging the wounds. After that was done, I cleaned out the cuts on her arms and legs as best as I could, trying to avoid causing any further harm. Using my ring to skin her more thoroughly, I discovered without surprise that she had broken several bones and suffered from numerous contusions. Luckily, none of the injuries seemed life-threatening, at least not anymore. A few moments ago, her injuries would have been lethal for her. But it seemed like her anatomy was reacting to the sun faster than expected, having already begun the healing process at an alarming pace. Seeing she would recover perfectly without much intervention, I administered some painkillers to ease this process and applied ice packs to minimize any possible swelling. How long before she wakes up? Raven asked. Not long, I answered, watching with my ring how her cells began to repair themselves, faster and faster with each passing second. I was genuinely impressed by her physiology and the amount of power it revealed. She'll be back on her feet soon. So, how are the plans for the upcoming war? Lucifer asked, breaking the silence. I looked up to meet his gaze. I honestly couldn't tell what he was thinking. He was hard to read, hard to deal with, like a lion waiting for a reason to snap. As good as anyone can hope. Lucifer nodded, a satisfied smile playing on his lips. Fancy a drink? A drink? That actually sounds quite nice. Sure, why not? I nodded. I'll keep an eye on her, go, Raven said, probably making sure I wouldn't feel guilty for leaving her side. Thanks, I said and began to walk away with Lucifer. Lucifer smiled at this, pulling out 2 glasses from beneath the bar and filling them with whiskey. Making sure to add 2 cubes of ice to each glass, before placing them on the white marble countertop. He pushed one towards me and raised his own in a toast. To the future, he said. To the future, I echoed with a smile, clinking my glass against his. We both took a sip of our drinks and, for a moment, we just stood there, in silence. So, any idea what you will do once all of this is over? Lucifer asked after a while. I haven't really thought about it, I said, taking another sip from my glass. It was hard to picture anything other than the now when life grows in complications. I get it, sometimes it is hard to see beyond the present. So, let's talk about the now then, Lucifer said, leaning in closer. Ready to go back to your heroic deeds when all of this is over? Can we not talk about this now? I said, hoping to escape the conversation. You know what they say, Lucifer answered, his voice low and playful. The future belongs to those who prepare for it today. I sighed. I know, but let me figure that out the hard way, can you? Of course, he laughed. I'm just making friendly conversation, Lance. Besides, it's not like the answer matters, after all, I trust you will make your future a quite interesting one. Done with my drink and the conversation, I moved away from the bar and towards Raven, leaving Lucifer to his own thoughts. Everything going okay? I asked as I approached her. You left for 1 minute, Raven deadpanned. I smiled awkwardly. Right, sorry about that. Just trying to keep my head occupied. It's okay, Raven said and nodded toward the slumbering girl on the table in front of us. I have a question though, how do you plan on telling her you killed her cousin? I sighed and looked away. Like many things as of late, I hadn't given that much thought yet, and who could blame me, my mind was preoccupied with the upcoming war. I suppose I'll cross that bridge when I get to it, I said, placing a hand on Raven's shoulder. On that matter, any idea how to teach her English, immediately? I sincerely doubt she will speak in any language we can understand. Raven shook her head, before getting up and moving closer to Cara. No idea, but I suppose I could make a spell to fix that. Good, I nodded. As much as my rings could be used as universal translators, it was best if Cara knew how to communicate, even if it could result in her trying to kill me for what I had done to her cousin. Whatever her reaction is, you won't face this alone, she will face us both, Raven said, noticing the look on my face. I sighed, grateful for her support, it really meant a lot. Don't worry, Ray, I'm much stronger than her. I know, Raven smiled. Be that as it may, I will be there for you when the time comes. Thank you, I replied, giving her a hug. It was good to feel like this, with Raven by my side, I felt at home. As we hugged, sharing a moment of peace, Cara woke up abruptly, gasping and clutching her chest as if she had been startled by a dream. Her wild eyes darted around the room before they settled on me, and I could already feel anger coursing through her veins. Cara jumped from the table, rage written across her face. Her fists were clenched, and she charged at me with surprising speed, not enough to be worthy of a Kryptonian, but enough to be considered superhuman. Taking a step forward, I readied to knock her out. But before I could do anything, Raven had already used her magic to lift Cara up in the air and pin her against the wall with a wave of her hand. She's scared, and angry, Raven said calmly. I can't blame her. This can't be easy to grasp, I would know. Chapter 219, Chapter 203. Back on daily schedule for this one, at least for this week. If we keep the spot around top 10 or some. Marvel will be updated tomorrow. David Lance POV. It took us a while to calm Cara down, and all things considered, it was understandable it had, but with the help of Raven, and my rings to translate, I managed to come to an understanding with Cara, making clear we weren't her enemies. Needless to say, I had left out the fact I had killed her cousin. Not because I wanted to keep her on the blind, but because I wanted her to be in a better state of mind to process that before telling her. How are you feeling, Cara? I asked her. Okay, I guess, she replied in her native tongue. Her eyes glazed over with a mix of emotions, but none that showed any sort of joy or comfort, just sorrow and despair. Good, I nodded, scanning her body to make sure her wounds were healing nicely. Do you have any questions for us? She shook her head but then paused. There was a grip of uncertainty surrounding her, and I could see she wanted to say something, so after a few short moments of indecisiveness, she spoke. Where am I? I had already told her that. Was she perhaps having some sort of amnesia due to the crash? Oh, wait, I just realized she must not know what I meant by Earth when I was explaining her situation. I have no idea what your people called this planet, but natives call it Earth. As far as where we are on the planet, well, we are currently in the United States of America, in the state of LA, I answered. I know none of those things mean a thing to you, but I'll get you a book once Raven figures out how to teach you English in a day. Cara smiled at my answer, or at least attempted to, but it seemed like there was still a lot weighing on her mind as she glanced around the room. I feel stronger than I have ever felt. Is this something normal to Earth? I shook my head. No, it isn't. You are special, in a manner of speaking. To make it simple, your Kryptonian physiology allows you to absorb, store, and use solar radiation, at least that which comes from a yellow Sunday. How this happens, well, I'm not sure. But I reckon it has a lot to do with your biological makeup, which includes a number of organs that lack parallel in humans and whose functions are unknown. My guess is that those organs process this radiation, like a plant so to speak, allowing your body to be strengthened by it. Cara nodded slowly, her eyes still a bit confused. I could tell she was still processing the news, so I decided to give her some room. Perhaps I had gone too scientific with my explanation. You should rest now, I said, patting her arm and giving her a small smile. We can continue this conversation another time. Cara nodded again, closing her eyes and finally embracing the sleep that had been eluding her. Getting into the field of genetics? Raven asked. Maybe, I replied with a smile. I would like to go to college when all of this is over, have some normality back in my life. I crave boring endeavors, I really do. Raven nodded. You're an admirable man, David. Even now you can see some light at the end of the tunnel. I don't know about that, I said, shaking my head. I wasn't admirable, and I was certainly not positive. I was just being honest. I craved a moment of mundanity like someone craves water in the desert. Even now you can't take a compliment, can you? Raven sighed, rolling her eyes at me. It's called being modest. You should try it sometime, I shot back. Why would I? I'm awesome, and I see no need in pretending I'm not, Raven replied. I agree, you go, girl. Lucifer grinned from his corner, taking a sip of the drink he was holding in his hand. Worry not, dear David, you can continue being modest, while Raven and I continue being awesome, me more than her, of course. Brainiac POV. I watched as the massive fleets of ships began to assemble in formation, ready to strike my enemies when they least expect it. I had been planning this attack carefully, analyzing each possible scenario, each outcome, and unlikely possibility, and it was finally time to put my plan into action. I would send my drones to keep Darkseid's armies occupied, while I focused on the main task, capturing the anomaly. He was the key to unlocking the secrets of the multiverse, the key to infinite knowledge, and I was determined to do whatever it took to make him mine. He had escaped me once, but not anymore. I had evolved past my primitive understanding of his capabilities, and I now knew exactly how to capture him. I had created a body, a unique vessel to carry my being into battle, one crafted to evolve in order to match my opponent. It had its downsides, as I would have to isolate my entire being into this body, but it would grant me the power to match him, and Darkseid, separately. Initiating Project Apex. With that said, I began to upload my consciousness into my vessel, watching as the nanites moved through my current being to the newest one, integrating every particle of myself into this new form. The process was quick and effective, and in mere seconds, I had become one with this new form, now having acquired capabilities far beyond what any other organic being could ever hope to possess. With this body, my strength was unparalleled, and with this power, soon, I would acquire knowledge far beyond what any other being could ever hope to understand or comprehend. I ought to thank the anomaly for pushing me in the right direction, for in this new state of existence, I was effectively unstoppable. His escape and the events that had soon followed, had forced me to transcend my previous limits. Everything will be mine, I spoke to the universe. The apex has come. And with that said, I surged forward, faster than light itself alongside my armies, towards my ultimate goal, knowledge beyond comprehension. Chapter 220, Chapter 204. I'm not dead, I've been fixing some shit. And I'm done with that. Expect more chap starting Feb. David Lance POV. I walked out of Lucifer's bar, leaving Raven in charge of Cara, as I took some time to think things out. I needed to start planning for the upcoming war, and I had no idea where to start, with Superman time had been on my side. This time, however, fortune wasn't so kind as to smile at me. At least this time I wasn't fighting alone. As I pondered about my situation, I felt a chill in the air alerting my senses. Something had changed in the atmosphere, bringing a feeling that each second grew and tightened until I felt like I could reach out and touch it. I don't know how I knew it, but I knew something was approaching Earth, and it was coming for me. And it had to be Brainiac. I knew Darkseid, better than Brainiac at least, and if wanted to kill me, he would not resort to a surprise attack, not with me. As darkness descended over this feeling of inevitability, I ordered my troops, the ones I had acquired at Apocalypse, to get into formation to face the oncoming threat, giving them clear orders through my rings. What happened? Raven asked, appearing through a portal with an alarmed expression, one that clearly implied she had felt my sudden switch of emotions. Brainiac, he's coming, I replied, giving Raven a small glance before turning my attention to the sky. We are severely underprepared, you must find Batman, and start evacuating people to shelters. I won't let you fight him alone, Raven shot back, understanding what I was intending to do without needing me to tell her. I smiled at her. Last time, Brainiac captured me because he had caught me off guard. At the time I hadn't been aware of his existence or his intentions with me. Now I am, so don't worry, I will disassemble that overglorified toaster. Raven frowned, feeling the lies and the truths between my words mix. The truth was, I wasn't entirely sure how I would fare against Brainiac, but that didn't matter. I would win. Regardless of the cost. I refused to lose when I was so close to finally go back home, to finally break out of this hell that little bastard had sent me. I wanted to see my sister. Oliver. I wanted to have the normality that had been taken from me. You die on me, and I will kill you, Raven threatened in a way that really had no bite, but that showed how much she cared, how much I meant to her. I smiled once again. A good luck kiss. Ask me later, Raven replied with a faint, yet playful smirk, before teleporting to do what I had asked her to do. I sighed, so much for knight's blessing from a maiden's kiss. Oh well, I guess that's all right. I'm no knight, no hero, no villain, just a guy who wants to go fucking home. Shaking my head, and pushing my thoughts aside, I cleared my mind readying for battle, and once my head was empty, I took off to face Brainiac. I flew into space, reaching my army within moments, and waited. Good kitty here, good kitty sent by mate scary, Darkseid said, hovering around my legs for a moment before brushing against them. You mean Raven sent you? I asked, holding a smile from taking over my face. Darkseid nodded. Scary mate sent me, good kitty here, good kitty ready to kill. I cracked a smile at that, petting the little rascal for a few moments before turning my attention back to the horizon. After all, Brainiac was finally here. Unexpected, Brainiac spoke, his voice breaking through the emptiness of space like a hot knife through butter, as his seemingly endless armada came into full view, showing I was heavily outnumbered. It was not within calculation for you to be waiting for me. No matter, the result will still be the same. Shut the fuck up. I shouted, blasting everything in front of me, destroying in the process millions of his soldiers. At times like this, I was really glad I had these powers. A futile endeavor, Brainiac said through the debris, shooting at me with some sort of projectiles that moved faster than light itself. However, before they reached me, I destroyed them by sending a wave from my rage ring. Impressive, those projectiles were specifically made to counter the emotional spectrum of the rings, and their energy, yet it seems that you still managed to overload their circuits with your ring, Brainiac praised, his eyes scanning over me. Literally, I could see his pupils change colors, and my rings confirming he was inspecting me. On another note, I just now realized something. Brainiac was perfectly fine, he had tanked my earlier scream, and his body was showing no signs of damage, at all. This didn't bode well. 3 rings, rage, will, and hope, Brainiac said, his tone cold and detached. Subject reveals an energy output of 291% over normal capacity, adapting data. Kill them all, Darkseid, I said, before charging at Brainiac. However, just as I'm about to hit Brainiac, he moves to intercept me, stopping my incoming punch with his hand. Resistance is futile but is highly educative, so I will allow it, Brainiac said, staring into my eyes. I give him no reply and move behind him, punching him, into Jupiter, where I had just now decided we would battle. On that note, punching him had felt like punching a wall of steel, but as a human. I might have to use something more than brawn to win this fight. Any type of physical force has no effect on me, Brainiac said, showing once again my attack had done nothing. Your rings won't work on me, and your power lacks the focus to work on me as well, be that as it may. Show me the limits of your existence, an anomaly. I cracked my neck, side to side. Don't you tire of hearing yourself? Honest to God, you're annoying. Once again, my powers prove to be useless against him, but like before he's giving me more than he should have because now I have something to work with. Don't worry, you won't be hearing my voice once I start to dissect you, Brainiac replied, taking a step forward. Chapter 221, Chapter 205. All the problems keeping from writing are gone. Expect between 3 to 5 chapters a week, maybe even more going back to daily schedule. David Lance POV. I had no intention of losing. Brainiac had the upper hand, but I would figure it out, it was simply a matter of adapting. Now it was time to test things out, and see what I have to work with. Last time we saw each other, you had 2 rings in your possession, Brainiac started, walking towards me as if taking a stroll. My radar is getting some readings, you have 1 more. Feel free to use it. So he knows about the fear ring, so much for the element of surprise, that's not good. But I will play around it. I don't need that to defeat you, I replied, taunting the robot with a smile on my face, earning a pause from the robot. Then, as expected, Brainiac took the bait I had laid out for him and rushed right over to me. Despite his new body size and bulk, his speed was quite impressive, on par with mine. Concentrating on his movements, I moved. I shifted to the side at the last second, avoiding his first attack, and easily dodging the second with a quick dash to the skies, where I blasted him with a beam from all of my rings. Tanking the attack, Brainiac darted toward me without any delay, trying to grapple me. But with a swift motion, I once again dodged him and used the opportunity to launch my own attack on him with an onslaught of hail from my power rings. The energy from my rings couldn't harm him, but that didn't mean the other phenomena around him wouldn't affect him, so as predicted the force of my attack while unable to harm him, had been great enough to knock Brainiac out of balance, momentarily, sending him crashing into the ground. Taking this window of opportunity, one rushed at him. But, as I was about to reach the android, something shifted in the air, putting my danger sense on high alert, leaving something very clear to me. Something was coming, and if I was hit by it, I would die. Following my instincts, I took my distance, analyzing the situation, and as I did, several missiles fired from within the debris I had sent Brainiac crashing to. They were fast enough to get me if I made a single mistake, so quickly calculating their trajectories and free gaps between them, I weaved through them all, but, just as I dodged them, the missiles were back on me. A homing device. I continued dodging the projectiles, finding it rather easy compared to what Wyaska had put me through. But as easy as it was, dodging would solve nothing. Time to test if Brainiac's attacks are as sturdy as he is. Dodging for one last time to position my targets where I wanted them, I powered my rings up, and with a single wave of his arm, I created a shockwave that exploded all the missiles into nothing but large clouds of smoke after a deafening noise. It seems his attacks can be affected by powers. Good. I will take that into account, but I won't trust on it blindly. Brainiac is very crafty, and the fact he didn't attack me while I was dodging could very well mean he's manipulating me right into a trap. On another note, the explosions the missiles had generated were small but very powerful and concentrated. A single hit from them would have damaged me severely. It seems you have evolved past your own limits as well. You are quite cautious now, remarked Brainiac as the smoke cleared. Glad you noticed, I replied. I wonder how far caution will take you. Brainiac added, aiming his right arm toward me as a thin beam shot off toward me, faster than anything I had ever seen. I dodged it, but only because I had instinctively moved before Brainiac had shot. If I hadn't, that beam would have pierced me. I guess I will have to rely on danger sense for the time being. Impressive, but can you replicate that result again? Brainiac asked, pointing at me, this time with both of his arms. I jumped, trying to avoid the attack, but this time I had been too late. Brainiac had hit me, right in the leg. I jumped back and looked at my injured leg to see intense burn marks, depicting the immense power of Brainiac's attack. Not only it had broken through the ring's defenses, but it had pierced and hurt my body a lot. Pushing my pain aside, I rushed forward at light speed, my power rings propelling me faster and faster as I flew straight for Brainiac. Surprised by my change of action, Brainiac tried to fire a beam at me once again, but this time I was ready for him and moved before the beam could activate. Then, once I had closed up the distance between us, I threw a hard hook at his face, sending Brainiac flying and crashing against a nearby mountain. I have nothing else to learn from this fight. You fulfilled your purpose, Brainiac spoke, flying off the mountain I had sent him to, his arms shaping into energy blades. Time to be dissected. Having said that, Brainiac gave his blades a quick wave upwards, and then toward me from where he was standing. Suddenly a large wind was emitted from the bottom of the blades moving rapidly toward me. I dodged the first current of winds, but the second hit me, though, for some reason, I felt no pain. Don't worry, I will reattach your limb once I analyze your body. You won't be alive to see it through though, Brainiac said, looking at the ground. I followed his gaze and saw that one of my legs had been cut off from me. I cracked a smile. God, I was so fucking lucky. Had he aimed for the head, I would have probably died without realizing what he had done. Now I know. I ought to be thankful the greatest idiots are those who are too smart for their own good. Don't bother, I smiled, levitating the recently amputated leg from where it was, and putting it back in place with the blue ring. I can't mend my wounds just fine. Healing wounds with the blue ring was simple, if you had enough power, and had a Green Lantern ring. For some reason, both rings empowered each other. Impressive. But will it help you mend the wounds I will inflict on the girl known as Raven? Brainiac replied, his lifeless eyes staring into mine. I froze. Choose your next words carefully, I warned, glaring at him with rage and hate I hadn't felt since Superman. I will kill you, and her, and then everybody else, Brainiac replied. Lucifer the sexiest POV. Huh, well I guess that's that for Alexa. He had to bring the girl. I wonder when the villain will learn to have class, and a functioning brain. Oh well, time to have some televised fun. Chapter 222, Chapter 206. Lucifer TV POV. Hearing Brainiac's words, the threats he was throwing at the one person in this reality David saw to be his, something snapped within him. Something that had been dormant since Superman's demise, something that never truly awoken, but now is roaring, ready to tear anything and anyone apart. And honestly, gals and pals of the audience, what was Brainiac thinking it would happen? That David would surrender. Beg on his knees. Intellect level 12th my ass. Anyway, back to the fight. Sorry for the commentary my. Angered by Brainiac's threat, the battle soon reignited with David unexpectedly appearing before Brainiac, rage clear in his eyes. Brainiac, seeing this, moves his blades to cut David, but the latter kicks his arms out of their trajectory, unbalancing the android, before punching him with enough force the entire planet of Jupiter shook. Taken back by David's newfound strength, the android tries to counterattack but David creates a blade with his rings and cuts one of Brainiac's arms. Emotions can only carry you so far, Brainiac spat, reattaching his arm, before trying to say something else, but David pays him no attention, and simply cuts off his newly reattached arm. Shut the hell up, David growled, the energies of his rings growing in power. The hope to destroy him, the will to see it through, and the rage to fuel it all. This is not going according to the data. Further analysis is required, Brainiac muttered, taking some distance from David. You are empowering your attacks without the use of the emotional spectrum. You're channeling all your energy into a singular spot before attacking, creating a masterful blow. Impressive, you developed a new power, one capable of going through my defenses. It doesn't dash. At that moment, Brainiac is suddenly struck from behind by David, who had been tired of Brainiac's monologue. Giving the android no time to process, the enraged David was back on him instantly with a barrage of powerful fists and kicks each set even stronger than the last. Wait, how come the kid is now pushing Toaster back now? Mazikeen asked, tilting her head in inquiry to me. A few moments ago the kid was struggling, and now he's, well, kicking that tin can's ass. Unlike before, he isn't thinking, Wyaska replied before I could. He's just acting, sure, he's angry, and that's making him stronger, but his anger is not dictating his actions. He's just acting, instantly, no thoughts, nothing, just instincts and skills working together without a middleman. Huh, Mazikeen hummed. So that's what makes the kid tick. He loves her, and rage blooming in order to protect love, is quite strong, I added, with a chuckle. He's not questioning the limit of his power, or whether or not his attacks will affect him, he's just striking Brainiac without a doubt, and his power is reacting to that, providing results. Reaching that state takes more than a lifetime to most warriors, Wyaska continued, taking the drink I was offering her. And most never perfect that state. In my case, it took me 300 years to first reach it, and another 200 to master it. The fact he reached this state of focus so young, and while dealing with his rage is nothing short of impressive. Well, but of course, no friend of mine can be mediocre, I nodded, winking at Maz who was rolling her eyes at me. Perhaps, Wyaska chuckled softly. I doubt he's even aware of it, to be honest. But at the end of the day, it doesn't matter if he's aware of it, or not. The result of the fight became clear the moment Brainiac decided to play, instead of finishing things up. Alright, everybody shush, I want to see how David finishes things up, I ordered, turning my attention back to the fight. David rushed forward, grabbing Brainiac by the throat before slamming him down, hard. The force of the slam was enough to make Brainiac's body form a crater, and David still wasn't done with him. Eyes lost in rage, David reared his arm back, energy coursing through it as he prepared to deliver his most powerful strike yet. I had enough of this, Brainiac growled, blasting David off him with a powerful energy beam, making David stumble back. Ignoring the android's attack, David skidded to a stop, and just as Brainiac was preparing himself for another assault, David was already back on him. With each punch, with each step, the android took another step back, losing ground as David moved in for yet another attack. This can't be happening, Brainiac growled, cutting one of David's arms with his blades, in an attempt to slow him down. But just as he had cut it, David reattached it and was back to attacking in a blink of an eye, as if it hadn't happened in the first place. There was no doubt in Brainiac's head anymore, he was losing. Whatever had changed within David, whatever his taunts, that were supposed to make him act sloppier, had actually made him stronger, faster, and impossible to deal with, at least not with the current set. An update was required. Darkseid POV. Red was dealing with Brainiac in an efficient manner, overpowering the little machine, showing him that power can't be computed, or calculated. Power, true power is something very few creatures wield. Granny goodness, order our troops to retreat back to Apocalypse, I ordered, my voice reverberating through the throne room, making Granny goodness snap to attention and nod quickly. It seems there is no longer a need for me to kill Brainiac. What about Little Red? Granny goodness asked as she inputted the coordinates to make the boom tube. Another day, I replied, walking towards the portal that was opening. I intend to eliminate him, at his best. Anything less would be an insult to Darkseid. Granny goodness smiled. As you command it, it shall be done. Chapter 223, Chapter 207. As we continued clashing, Brainiac began to adapt, and within little time he had recovered his ground. I can't understand you. No matter what I do, how much I prepare, you still manage to surmount my expectations, began Brainiac as he took some space from me. How do you do it? I cracked my neck, my legs parting slightly for better support as I waited for Brainiac to make his next move. For someone who seeks infinite knowledge, you're pretty dumb. Brainiac said nothing, glaring at me without a hint of emotion, before blasting towards me, swinging his blade in a circular motion. Seeing through his attack, I parried his advance easily with one hand and attacked with the other. Brainiac dodged the attack in turn by jumping back. Then, Brainiac moved forward, grabbing my hand before sending me into the air. Taking hold of my situation, I maneuvered out of the air easily, stopping a few meters away, just in time to see Brainiac pounce on me again. Getting back into a fighting stance, I weaved away without difficulty, avoiding several punches and kicks before being surprised by a missile at point-blank range. The missile collided with me, leaving me no time to dodge, creating an explosion of massive proportions. How interesting. I muttered, as the smoke of the explosion cleared out, revealing I was unharmed. I had used the rings at the last moment to isolate the explosion, receiving only minimal damage. If you had started this fighting like this, you might have stood a chance. Brainiac frowned. Lighting my rings up, I moved. This time it was my turn to attack, so I pressed forward, raining on Brainiac with everything I had. Brainiac parried and slipped for a long time to the best of his ability, before getting an elbow in the stomach, which made him spit. Between us, that seems like a design flaw. I mean, why would you make yourself be able to feel pain? And if you had to, why would you make yourself emulate the response? Brainiac said nothing. Instead, he gasped for a short time, glaring at me for a moment before he attacked with one of his blades. I dodged, breaking the base of his cybernetic blades, before kicking Brainiac away. Then, as Brainiac tried to recover, I moved forward. Face to face, fast and powerful blows were exchanged at breakneck speed, as the shock waves of our clash were felt throughout the planet. Finally, after several moments, where seemingly neither of us had no advantage over the other, we separated. This battle has gone for long enough, Brainiac said, his eyes narrowing a bit. Time to show you the full extent of my power. You were right, if I had taken this seriously from the start, we wouldn't be here. I said nothing, taking on another defensive stance. And without another word, Brainiac attacked, with a sense of confidence so big that it was almost palpable. I waited for Brainiac to reach me and then began to avoid his first strike by grabbing his neck with my right hand and slamming him into the ground. You're not living up to your own hype, Brainiac, I said, arms crossed as the android began to stand up. Resistance is futile, I will win, and I will claim the universe and everything outside it, Brainiac boasted, his body crackling with electricity. All of a sudden, he felt more dangerous. I smiled, uncrossing his arms. Of one thing you were right, this battle has gone on for long enough. Having said that, I pressed forward at full speed. Brainiac moved to meet me midway, attempting to cut my head off with his blades but failed to do so, instead receiving a knee that hit him in the stomach. Brainiac recovered quickly and counterattacked with a broad and precise movement, blasting me away into the planet's surface with a violent crash. The android pushed forward, intending to press his advance. I would give him no chance. Back! I shouted, blasting him away as I recovered my ground. Brainiac, having lost his momentum, growled before releasing a ball of energy at me. I slapped it away. I was getting used to his weapons, and how I had to use mine to be effective against him. Time to die, Brainiac then suddenly muttered, appearing behind me, and blasting me with a point-blank beam of energy. Brainiac laughed in victory. I chuckled, cutting his victorious laugh short, revealing I was standing, still in perfect condition, amid the dust that was quickly dissipating. Holding a small shield of energy from my rings behind my back, the shield being lightly burned and scorched, smoking because of the attack. You really thought that would work? I asked with a smile, not even looking back. It's like you're not even trying anymore. Brainiac took a step back, and for the first time since I had known him, I saw fear in his eyes. Thanks to you, and your preparations. I learned to control the energies of my rings to the point I can ignore your defenses, so do try your best to dodge these, I said, turning around. Then, before Brainiac could fully grasp what I had meant, a multitude of beams sprung from my fingers, a rainbow of red, green, and blue. Each beam was narrow, and very fast, zooming straight to Brainiac. Brainiac began to dodge, not without difficulty, having multiple beams scratch him as he weaved through my assault. Then, as he was about to be cornered, he disappeared out of sight. Just like before. He had moved out of sight. And knowing him, he will appear behind me. I grinned, I might as well use this to my advantage. As predicted, Brainiac appeared behind me, summoning one of his all-cutting blades. Then, in a clean, precise movement, he cut through me, from my right shoulder down to my waist. However, before he could retract his arm, I grabbed it with my remaining arm. Brainiac tried to escape, but no matter how much he tried, I did not allow any motion to be made. That hurt, I said, using my blue ring to reattach and heal the parts of my body he had cut, leaving only his blade and arm inside of my abdomen, by holding his arm tight. But it made easier what comes next. Before Brainiac could ponder on that thought, I pierced his chest with my right arm. This can't be. Brainiac muttered. I would say go to hell, but we both know you don't have a soul, I replied, blasting Brainiac from the inside out, destroying his entire body in a flaming explosion. I coughed, dropping to the ground out of exhaustion. To think Brainiac could have won that if he had played to his strengths, using his vast resources to tire me, and eventually kill me. I guess I'm lucky he wasn't all that smart. Or perhaps he was smart, just not wise. Who cares anyway? Bravo, that was outstanding. That voice. Lucifer. You enjoyed the show? I asked, dropping to the ground on my back. I most certainly did. You went from getting your butt kicked to kicking whatever he had instead of an ass. Lucifer clapped, a proud smile on his face. Buttock. That has to be the most British shit you have ever said to me. I rolled my eyes, breathing like I had run a marathon, without superpowers. So, ready to go back to the bar. And get the pretty girl, Lucifer teased, but I didn't care. I did in fact want to go back to the bar to get the pretty girl. I do, I replied with a tired nod. Chapter 224, Chapter 208. I wake up to quiet and warmth. Stretching away, I blinked away the lingering haze of sleep and groggily sat up, looking around the place. It seemed like I was in a room of some kind. It looked luxurious, full of artifacts and other things that looked like they belonged to a museum. I didn't need much after seeing that to come to the conclusion this had to be one of Lucifer's rooms at his bar. The window in the room was open, revealing a rather sunny day. I sighed. I owed Lucifer one for bringing me here. Pushing myself off the bed, I get up and find my clothes, folded neatly above the nightstand, realizing just now I was naked. Had Lucifer undressed me? Shaking my head, I put aside my questions for the moment and started to dress, and as I did so, my eyes were drawn to a chair that rested near my bed. The chair was an arm's length from the bed, and had a book, a novel, resting above it. Raven. I was almost certain that chair was there because of Raven. Hopefully, she had been the one to undress me. I really don't want to deal with Lucifer's shenanigans. I sighed, just now realizing my rings were gone. Normally I would have some concerns about this, but considering the one that could have stolen them was Lucifer, I wasn't all that concerned. I mean, the guy had no use for them and could have taken them from me at any given moment if he so desired. So my best guess was that he was simply trolling me for the sake of it. At least he had the decency of healing my body before taking them. After all, I'm not entirely sure I can survive without a heart. Maybe I can regenerate it, but I doubt I was in a condition to do so when he picked me up. To defeat Brainiac I had to force myself into a state of perfect focus, and let's just say each move I made hurt me relatively more than it hurt Brainiac. Pushing those thoughts aside, I made my way down to the club. As expected, Lucifer was standing behind the bar, serving himself a drink, as Mazikeen bothered him. Now, where's Raven? David. Raven said, announcing her presence from behind, before leaping into my arms and giving me a fierce hug. You promised me you wouldn't push yourself too much, and you did. I blink. I mean, I don't think I pushed myself a lot. Sure, I exhausted my body to the very bone, but not to a point you should worry. You slept for over a week, Lucifer said, setting his drink aside. You pushed your body to the limit and forced your rings to produce more energy than they were designed to mold. Between you and I, you're lucky you survived, David. I know, jackass. But you didn't have to fuck me with that in front of Raven, who is prone to overworry. You were saying? Raven said, her eyes piercing into mine in a cold demeanor. You're beautiful, I smiled awkwardly. Raven raised one of her brows. That's your move? Telling me I'm beautiful. I nod in a tentative manner. I mean, you're right. But, I don't see how that has anything to do with the fact you almost died in the most stupid way anyone can, by overexerting one's body. Raven sighed, rubbing her temples. I won, and learned a few things along the way. And most importantly, I survived, so let's not worry about it, shall we? I signed, patting Raven on the head only for her to push my hand away with a pulse of magic. You don't get to pat me, after almost dying, Raven said, though in a lighter mood. You two are getting frisky, me likey, Lucifer chuckled, wiggling his eyebrows at me. I rolled my eyes at him. By the way, where are my rings? In the washing machine, Lucifer said as if it was the most normal thing to say to my question. I blinked, clearly confused as to why he would wash my rings. Why? They stank, Lucifer replied without missing a beat. When was the last time you took a shower? Oh God, I can't remember. At least. I think it has been a year, maybe more since I last took a real shower. That's what I thought. The fact you have trinkets that can clean your body and dispose of waste doesn't mean you have to behave like an uncultured beast, Lucifer sighed, shaking his head in disappointment. Could you imagine if you had had your first sexual encounter with your almost girlfriend in that state? I almost choked at that part. Though to my surprise Raven seemed completely unfazed by Lucifer's comment. I had to deal with Lucifer for over a week. I have grown desensitized to his behavior, Raven interjected with a neutral expression. Was that why you undressed him, you little minx? Lucifer grinned, from ear to ear like a bastard having fun. Raven blushed a little, which was noticeable with her pale complexion. It was either me, or your demon friend, who I do not trust. You are right not to trust me. I would have fucked the kid. He's packing serious heat down there, Mazikeen grinned from her chair. Well, that's both flattering and concerning. Mostly concerning. Mazikeen. Lucifer gasped, pretending to be shocked. What can I say? A girl has needs, and Mute Boy over there, he has the pull to scratch my itch. Mazikeen winked at me. Interested, pretty boy? I might even teach you a thing or two about torture. No thanks, I replied as quickly as she asked the question. My limit in crazy was Harley. I would go deeper into that abyss of craziness with Mazikeen. Besides, I wanted to start something with Raven, and in order to do that I needed to keep it in my pants. Are we done talking about his penis? Raven said, his blush bigger than before. Penis. Girl, call it how it is, a dick, Mazikeen grinned. I mean, you will be riding it in many ways, so you might as well learn its proper name. Even though this conversation includes me, I feel like I should be somewhere else. Lucifer, would you like to accompany me on a walk? I said, looking between Raven and Mazikeen. And miss this? Not a chance, go and walk alone, Lucifer replied. Chapter 225, Chapter 209. David Lance POV. I walked outside Lucifer's bar to breathe some fresh air, leaning against the door as it closed. Defeating Brainiac had felt underwhelming. Perhaps it was the fact that Brainiac had no fighting experience. He had the knowledge of a million fights, but no real experience to call his own. Now, all that was left was the Lord of Apocalypse, Darkseid. Darkseid would surely prove to be an entirely different manner. He had everything Brainiac lacked, making him an impossibly larger threat as a whole. If I had anything on my side was the fact I didn't intend to fight him alone, not for a moment. I was confident in my skills, but with Darkseid, it was best not to risk it. You seemed troubled. Wyaska asked, her voice coming from above. I looked up, finding Wyaska sitting on a widow right above me. A little bit, I admitted with a nod. What are you doing up there? Enjoying the view? Wyaska chuckled softly. Hardly, as colorful as Earth is, it's not my kind of planet. I preferred the ones with a rougher exterior. In hindsight that makes sense, considering how Apocalypse looks. Fair enough, I shrugged, as Wyaska jumped down the window landing beside me without a sound. So, what's troubling you? Wyaska inquired calmly. I paused for a brief moment, considering the answers to that question. As stupid as it sounded, her question had many answers, though most leaned to the same cause, Darkseid. You know why, I replied, giving her a side look. Wyaska smiled for a moment before turning to look at me. I still don't understand why you remain here. For all intents and purposes, you already paid your debt to this universe. I don't know, call it my last heroic deed, I smiled, winking at her. Wyaska chuckled. You are much more pleasant to deal with without those pesky rings. No sudden burst of emotions, no killing intent, no overwhelming hate. I guess I do feel calmer and more collected without the rings. No rage, no fear, no hope, no will, at least not in massive amounts. Right now, I just felt tired, exhausted. Like I want to sleep for a year, and let the world burn while I do so. I don't wear them because I like them. Well, maybe I like the blue one, it helps a lot when it comes to healing, but as for the rest, I despise them with all my heart, I said, taking a deep breath. The only reason I still use them is because I need them to fill the gap in power between me and some of my enemies. Once that need is no longer there, I will destroy them, or throw them away. Wyaska chuckled once again. Throwing them away, you say? I find that rather amusing, especially considering they are some of the most powerful weapons in creation. Allegedly. I shrugged. What can I say? I hate them. Their existence reminds me of every bad moment I have endured here. It's a constant reminder of my suffering, so why would I keep them? Unlike most people seem to think, I don't enjoy pain. I hated the rings and everything they represented. Though I was honestly considering keeping the blue one, its healing capabilities were remarkably good, outstanding in every aspect. But for the rest, I hated them all. Especially the red one. Don't mistake my previous comment for a lack of approval, Wyaska replied, putting her hand on my shoulder. To be entirely honest, I approve of your choice wholeheartedly. After all, a warrior that needs trinkets to fight is no warrior at all. If you keep them, you will grow dependent on them, and eventually, that will only hinder your growth, stagnating you as a mediocre failure. I honestly didn't care if they hindered my growth or not, I just didn't want them. Benefits or cons be damned. Granny goodness POV. War had been called off. As to why the war had been called off, we didn't know yet. Only that it had to do with Little Red defeating Brainiac. It was very unlike our Lord to cancel a call for war, but who were we to question his wisdom, his power? A good servant does as he or she is told, without hesitation. And I was a good servant, no. Granny was the best there was. Granny goodness, Darkseid said, his voice echoing through the lovingly haunting halls of his castle. To the war room, immediately. Hearing his orders, I moved to the war room to find my god waiting for me. My life is yours to command, I kneeled. Prepare a boom tube to Earth, I wish to speak with Red, Darkseid ordered. A most curious order, one worded in a most curious way. He wishes to speak with Red, not kill him, how odd. As you wish. Next time you hesitate, it will be your last breath, Darkseid added, clearly seeing through my concerns. I nodded, as pain like never before invaded my body. I deserved this, our god was right, who was I to question his motives, I was only here to see his will be made a reality. David Lance POV. I continued talking with Wyaska until she decided to go out and explore, leaving me to roam the streets of the city alone. Well, almost alone. Someone was tailing me. Batman, don't you have something better to do? I asked, knowing very well that from wherever he was hiding he could see me sign. You defeated Brainiac, Batman replied, coming out of the shadows. I did, though my question still stands. What are you doing here? Darkseid is still a threat, one bigger than me by a larger margin, so piss off, you have a Justice League to rebuild, I replied. Batman at this narrowed his eyes. You are no better than Superman ever was. You claim you're a hero, but all you do is for your own gain, you kill, you sacrifice, and you don't care about anything after you're done. I smiled at him. You think I claim to be a hero? That's adorable, I was a hero. At one point in my life, not anymore, I'm just a guy, tired of this game you heroes and villains play. Batman frowned. There was a time, I was content with playing the game like everyone else. Not anymore, so zip it with your self-righteous shit, I'm not interested in what you think, so save it for the next Robin, I replied, turning around only to see a few more figures appear. Flash. Harley. Aquaman. Catwoman. And Black Canary. I turned around. Oh, I see. You plan to capture me. That's just sweet. Let me guess, you saw me without the rings, and said, this is the time. Batman tensed, as did everyone else. I won't lie, this might be your best shot at capturing me. Though be warned that although this might be your best shot, you still have no chance whatsoever, I continued, readying myself for a fight. But don't let my words discourage you. Try your best. Chapter 226, Chapter 210. David Lance POV. Batman and his little entourage began to close in. Nevertheless I remained calm. It was true that without the rings I was considerably weaker. But be that as it may, I wasn't so weak as to not be able to deal with this situation. Batman and Harley were hardly a challenge, and Aquaman, while strong in his own right, he lacked the power to finish me off. The only one in their team that posed a threat to me was the Flash. His speed would be extremely difficult to deal with without the rings, but I would manage. You know, I never pictured you as a stupid guy, Batman, I said, making sure Batman saw me sign. Unwise, totally, but not stupid. I mean, sure I don't like you, but I always thought you were pretty darn smart. After all, the smarter you are the better you are at rationalizing bad choices. Batman narrowed his eyes. It's there a point you're trying to get at? Jumpy, aren't we? I smiled. There is. And the point is, have you forgotten what my real power is, and what it could do to a populated area like this one? Batman tensed at this, visibly. The Joker needed a nuclear bomb, all I need is a whisper, I continued, staring at the group with cold detachment. So go ahead, test my patience. Test how far I have fallen. Harley groaned at this, facepalming herself. Why do I always like the crazy ones? Even the silent one has a crazy bone. Is this my punishment for shoplifting as a teen god? For a moment Batman stared at me silently, as if trying to discern whether I would actually do what I was threatening to do, or not. I wouldn't, not in a lifetime, but he didn't know that, and that alone was more than enough to force him into thinking. You wouldn't do that, Dinah said. I wouldn't. Then by all means, go ahead and test that theory, I challenged. Let's go, we are leaving, Batman said after a few moments. I didn't come here to capture, not really. I just wanted to see the men I was dealing with, now I know. Another moral dilemma where he jacks his ego from a podium of his own making. Fuck you, Batman, fuck you and everyone dumb enough to follow you. You know, I had it with you all. I saved this world from destruction, not once, but twice, and all you can see is how my methods to achieve that go against your moronic code of honor, I replied, my eyes burning into his with a glare carrying nothing but pure rage. You think you're above everyone because you let others make the hard choices. You let the government make the call whether or not the villains live, you let everyone but yourself see the truth of this accursed world. Well, guess what? There isn't a single country in the world with a court that would convict me. Batman remained silent. Sure, I killed people I didn't have to. But, even so, they wouldn't convict me. They would honor me, why? Because I gave them back their power, I grinned, pointing all around. The US government is back on the horse, thanks to me. Every government is back on their own horse thanks to me, and because of that, instead of a villain, I would be marketed as a hero. Batman narrowed his eyes. You make a lot of presumptions about what would happen. Eager to find out. I rolled my eyes at him again. Remember well, Batman, the world congratulated Superman for killing the Joker, what do you think they will do for me? Sure, some will fear me, hate me even. But those in power, those with the ability to decide my destiny should you capture me, well, they would love me. Perhaps Wyaska was right. Perhaps I had done enough for this universe. Having said my piece I turned around and started walking towards the bar, when all of a sudden a boom tube opened in the middle of the street just a few feet away from where I was standing. I jumped back, taking some distance from the portal opening. I didn't need much to know who was coming. Darkseid. Leave it to my luck to have the biggest challenge I have left here to come when I'm at my weakest. We meet again, Red, Darkseid spoke, walking through the tube into the middle of the street. Fuck fuck I can't fight Darkseid without the rings, at least not without destroying the fucking Earth in the process, which would beat the point of fighting him to begin with. Seeing Darkseid in the middle of the street, and my reaction, Batman adjusted his priorities, changing his body language in a way that left clear I was no longer his target. I didn't come here for a battle. Fighting you as you are now is beneath me, Darkseid said, his voice as cold and dark as I remembered it to be. Then why did you come? Batman pressed. To congratulate Red, Darkseid replied. You destroyed not one, but two of my enemies. A reward is due. Even if you are to die at my hands at a later time, Darkseid rewards competence. He came to Earth to reward me. Motherbox, create a kinetic field of energy around Red and I, Darkseid ordered, and as soon as those words left his mouth, we were covered in a reddish dome of energy, leaving everyone outside, except of course, Darkseid and I. I've been told you can't speak without the rings. And that you don't do so out of the feeble fear of destroying your surroundings. I don't share your concerns, but for the sake of a conversation. This dome will allow you to speak. A dome of energy capable of redistributing the power generated by my voice. He works fast. He did his homework about my powers. Now, let us talk. Normally that would be a poor choice of words for anyone, but Darkseid, he's one of the few I could probably have a conversation with without hurting him. Chapter 227, Chapter 211. David Lance POV. I looked at Darkseid, who was just a few meters away from me, unmoving, with his arms crossed behind his back. This was bad, very bad. If a fight broke out, I would lose. I knew the limits of my strength better than anyone, and right now I was well out of my range. Without the rings, fighting Darkseid would ultimately result in my demise. I had to be careful. Sure, he had said he wanted to talk, but even then, even when I knew he wasn't lying, but even then. Any misstep in this conversation he wanted could lead to an outcome I couldn't afford to pay as things were. Don't waste my time, Darkseid said, his eyes glowing red. What are you doing here? I asked, my voice shattering the terrain within the force field with massive destructive power. Yet Darkseid remained unfazed as if my whispers were nothing more than a summer breeze. I don't like to repeat myself, Darkseid growled. You've taken out two enemies of mine, I owe you one. Blood for blood. Darkseid always pays his debts. Maybe I could take advantage of this. And what are you willing to pay, King of Apocalypse? I asked. Darkseid smiled slightly at this. We are enemies. I know what you wish, you seek to save this pathetic excuse of a planet, from me. A deal like that can be made if you are willing to listen, that is. Nothing is ever easy, is it? I don't suppose you'd leave this part of the galaxy alone, just because I killed two of your enemies, would you? I asked, knowing very well the answer to that question. Darkseid smiled again. No. But I am open to negotiate. If you want to save this planet, and your galaxy, so badly. I don't know what he's planning with this conversation, but seeing as I have no other choice at the moment, I'll continue this to see where we get to. I'm all ears, I replied. I know you know more than you should, which is why I know you know that this is not my true body, but one of many avatars under my control, Darkseid replied, his eyes fixed on mine. That being clear, I'll get to the point. I will spare this planet, and nearby galaxies, if you join the game. If I join the game? What the fuck? The game? I asked. In your home universe, the human known as Vandal Savage, and I have an agreement. A promise, so to speak, to have a war like no other, and I want you to be a part of that war, Darkseid replied. Savage, and... Of course, I remember that. Before I could ponder on that bit of information any further, pain like no other invaded my head, as memories I didn't have before invaded my head one by one like a tidal wave. I remembered it all. Everything. Every episode one had ever seen was now clear as if I had just seen them. You want me to join your little game with Savage? I chuckled, the pain I had just suffered slowly fading away. Darkseid remained silent for a moment before smiling once again. 3 smiles in a day, from Darkseid himself. What a terrifying sight. Exactly, if you agree to this. I will spare this pathetic world and the surrounding worlds, Darkseid replied. All you have to do is make my conquest of your homeworld harder. So, I was basically trading my fight with him here, for a fight with him in my universe. My avatar there won't know a thing about your visit to this universe, so you will have time to make things interesting in your own way, Darkseid continued, his words making me pause. You will withhold information from your avatar in my universe? I asked, confused as to why he would do such a thing. Darkseid laughed at this one, a booming, dark, terrifying laugh. I have existed for billions of years. Each universe has a different origin from the one known as Darkseid, but in the end, all remains the same. I am entropy, I am death, I am Darkseid. If I wanted to conquer the multiverse without a challenge, I would have done so eons ago. My goal goes beyond conquering everything, so in each universe, I limit myself to the laws of the presence, and add a few handicaps myself to make things more interesting for each one of my avatars. As he spoke, I could feel the malice leaking out of his body, the power, the true power of the one behind the avatars. It was like staring at the sea, wondering how deep it was, knowing very well that any guess would be wrong. So that's what you want? I chuckled. You want to add another handicap for your avatar in my universe. And I happen to be a good option for that, right? Darkseid chuckled back. Yes. So, do we have a deal? Even though he worded that as a question, I knew I didn't have much of a choice. I could tell by the way he had allowed me to feel part of his true power, to see what lay behind the curtains of his avatar. He was telling me that I either accepted the deal or faced the consequences. Not that I needed a threat to accept. This deal was saving me the fight now, for doing something I would have done anyway in my world. We do, I nodded, extending my hand. You will leave this part of the galaxy alone, forever, and will not seek to harm it in any way. And I will join your little game with Vandal, right? Darkseid took my hand and shook it. We have a deal. Good luck. Having said that, Darkseid snapped his fingers, and the kinetic field that surrounded us started to dissipate as a boom tube opened in its place. I expect a lot from you, don't disappoint, Darkseid added, before stepping into the boom tube, and leaving Earth. Chapter 228, Chapter 212. David Land's POV. I remained in place after Darkseid had left, ignoring Batman and the rest of his group, who had once again begun to circle me. I couldn't pay them any of my attention. I had just made a deal with the darkest being in all of the DC multiverse, or one of the darkest beings anyway. The funny thing was, with or without the deal, I would have been forced to deal with the Darkseid in my universe. You made another deal with him, Batman said, and I could tell by the tone of his voice that he disapproved of my choice. I smiled, giving the Dark Knight a tired look. Goodbye, Batman, if luck is on our side, we will never see each other again. Having said that, I turned around and started to make my way back to the bar. Batman, seeing this, moved, perhaps in an attempt to stop me, or question me about my deal with Darkseid. However, before Batman could take another step, he was pushed into the ground violently, his body pressed by an invisible force. Raven, there was really no need, I smiled, looking above to see my Ray, looking at Batman with a murderous gaze. God, that was fucking hot. I disagree, Raven replied calmly. You're hurting him. Flash shouted, before darting towards Raven to stop her from crushing Batman. I moved, intercepting the speedster before he could reach Raven, by tackling him to the ground, destroying part of the street. Then, before he could get up, I broke one of his knees with an elbow strike. I honestly had nothing against him, but I wasn't about to let him hit Raven. Ag! Flash screamed in pain. Serves him right, not only he had tried to attack Raven, but he had done so at a level of speed I could intercept. I mean, if he had wanted to, he could have blitzed past me. Speedsters don't really have a weakness, other than the limitations they set for themselves. If Flash wanted, he could make fighting him really hard for me right now. In fact, if he used his powers correctly, he could very well defeat me, as long as I didn't have the rings, and wasn't willing to destroy the planet with a shout. Batsy, weren't we leaving? Harley asked with a nervous chuckle, as Aquaman stared at me. I'm leaving. I joined this alliance for the sake of my people, to defend them from Darkseid. That threat is no more, all thanks to the one Batman said we needed to capture, the King of the Seas side. I know we won't see each other again, but know the seas of Atlantis will remember what you did. You freed up from Superman, and from the threat of Darkseid, and for that, we will always welcome you. And for what it's worth, I apologize. Unexpected. I turned to look at Raven. Raven, let Batman go. We have to go. Raven reluctantly did as I asked, releasing Batman from her hold. You will never clean your hands from the blood that stains them, Batman growled out. I didn't reply, I just turned around and walked. He was right. I would never clean my hands, but neither would he. Our hands were stained, forever. His with the blood of innocence he could have saved, and mine with the lives I had to take. The difference between Batman and I was that I didn't care anymore. I just wanted to go home. At Lucifer's bar. I sat at one of the tables at the bar with a drink in hand, looking at the power rings in front of me. Lucifer had just finished cleaning them. As I stared at them in a turmoil of emotions, I couldn't help but wonder if he had taken the rings from me on purpose. Without the rings, I had been forced to approach the problem that Darkseid represented in a different manner. If I had had the rings with me, I would have probably engaged Darkseid in combat. So, ready to go home? Lucifer asked, snapping me out of my long reverie. I nodded. Friend going home? Darkseid said, his tail showing his discontent. Good kitty always with friend. I looked at my feline companion for a moment before reaching to him and scratching behind his ears. I had really not accounted for the fact of getting attached to him. You can take him with you, Lucifer said. I blinked. I could. Yes you can, and before you ask, I can read your mind, Lucifer replied to my inner thoughts, and before I could think of another thought, he added. And before you worry, I'm only reading the surface of your mind, I respect the privacy of others, even if I have the power to violate it easily. That was very ominous. But it's the truth, I mean, there isn't much I can do to stop him from reading my mind. Good kitty, no alone, not again, Darkseid said, the voice his ring was using sounding immensely sad at the prospect of being alone. I smiled, carrying the little killer matching into my arms as I put one of the rings on, the blue one. Well, seeing you leave me no choice, you're coming with me. But we need a new name for you, I mean, there's another Dex in my universe, probably. Lucifer nodded. There is. Darkseid frowned. New name. You could call him Dex, I mean, there are at least 1 million cats with that name on your Earth, Lucifer suggested. That way he gets to keep his name and avoid people questioning the existence of your cat. I guess that works. Thanks, Lucifer. The pleasure is all yours, Lucifer winked. Talking about pleasure, can you do me a favor, Lucifer? I asked. Yes, there's no need to ask. I will teach you how to please a woman, classes start tomorrow at 8 a.m., Lucifer nodded. What? No, I wasn't going to ask for that, not even remotely close, I replied, trying not to picture how the hell he would teach that kind of class. Poor girl then, Lucifer sighed. So, what is it that you want? What I was going to ask was if you could destroy these rings. I said, pointing at the rings on the table. I no longer need them and don't want others to use them. Lucifer chuckled. Normally people ask me for success, money, or sex, or all three. So, why not? I'll destroy them, but what about your little pet? Right. Dex has a red power ring. You can always give him the blue ring, it would be hilarious if he's the first dual lantern in your universe, Lucifer snickered. Not a bad idea. I know, I'm fabulous therefore all of my ideas are excellent, Lucifer winked. In fact, seeing I'm feeling helpful today. I will even fix some of the problems you could have by taking those rings home. Elaborate, I asked. All rings, all throughout the multiverse operate similarly, so the moment those rings enter your universe they will connect to the power ring database of the core they belong to, and, well, you know the rest, Lucifer chuckled. The point is, I will disconnect them from that net, so to speak. Free of charge. I know you're getting something out of this, maybe it's a laugh, or something else, but I thank you Lucifer, without your help, none of this would have happened, I replied, thanking Lucifer from the bottom of my heart. He had brought Raven here. He had saved me from dying after my fight with Brainiac. Even if he had ulterior motives, which I wasn't certain he had, I owed him a lot. The pleasure is all yours, indeed, Lucifer winked. Chapter 229, Chapter 213. David Lance POV. As I was getting ready to leave this damn place, this damn universe, I saw Cara pass by my room on her way to her bedroom. I hadn't seen her in a while. I still hadn't told her what I had done. The way I saw things, I had two choices right now. Tell her I had killed her cousin, or leave this accursed place without telling her. I sighed. She didn't deserve such cowardice from me, so far she was innocent and deserved the truth. Taking a deep breath, I walked out of my room and made my way to her room. Cara, I called out to her from outside the room, seeing as I still had the blue ring in my possession to facilitate conversation. A few moments after I had called out her name, she opened the door. She was still wearing the same clothes she had worn the last time I had seen her. Her hair was matted and she looked like she hadn't slept in days. "What is it?" she asked me with a tired look. "Is there something you need?" "I thought you were leaving." "I'm leaving, but before that I needed to tell you something," I replied, trying to find the right words to tell her about how her cousin had turned into a dictator. "Tell me what?" she asked with a hint of impatience in her voice. I sighed. "I needed to talk with you about your cousin." "About Kal-El?" Cara's eyes widened in shock as she took in my words. "What about him?" I hesitated for a moment before continuing. "It's difficult to explain, but if experience serves me right, things like this are better cut short, so I'll get down to the point." "What?" Cara asked, her voice softening. "Your cousin conquered Earth after going crazy, and I killed him," I replied. Cara stared at me for a few moments before her eyes filled with tears of rage and sorrow as she lunged at me, screaming. "How dare you!" she shouted as she hit me, punching me out of the building with a sonic boom. The punch had done little to no damage. "I don't believe you, he couldn't have done that, he was my family, an L. And you killed him." I allowed her to vent her rage on me, without fighting back. She was strong, but unskilled, meaning I had the luxury of letting her do as she pleased. "You don't have to believe me, you can ask anyone about Superman, and they will tell you all about him," I replied, as she continued to hit me. Eventually, after she was panting after hitting me so much, and the streets were empty of civilians, who had run in fright to hide, she looked up at me with a broken expression. "Why?" she asked me, her voice barely audible. "Why did you kill him?" "I did it out of revenge." But regardless of my reason, he had it coming. "In the sorrow of his loss, he allowed himself to become a tyrant and a dictator," I said, cleaning the blood that was running down my broken nose. "To make it short, I didn't do what I did out of a noble sense of heroism. Though in the end, what I did, even if it was for the wrong reasons, helped the world more than it did for me." Cara looked at me, tears streaming down her face. "I don't want to believe you. But it doesn't matter what I want, does it?" At this, her gaze turned to something behind me, a billboard that had Superman promoting the regime. "That the symbol of House L, it means hope. How ironic, isn't it?" I nodded slowly. "For what it's worth, I'm sorry. I don't regret killing him, but I do regret hurting you, you're innocent." Cara wiped away her tears and looked straight into my eyes. "I can't forgive you for this. But I understand why you did it," she said quietly. "If I were in your situation, I don't know if I could do the same thing. But at least I can understand." "I am not asking for your forgiveness," I replied, giving Cara a look. "You are free to hate me, as I was free to hate your cousin. I suppose it helps when we won't see each other again. Before I leave, a piece of advice: don't trust Batman. Out of all the heroes of this world, he's the one that less deserves your trust." Cara nodded, before stepping away from me and returning to Lucifer's bar in silence, leaving me alone in the street with my thoughts. "That went well," Lucifer muttered, walking out of nowhere. "It did, all things considered, it did," I nodded. Sure, she had broken my nose and bruised me a little, but that would heal in a few hours. "Did you help me there, making her accept the reality of things faster?" Lucifer smiled. "Who knows? Maybe I did, maybe I didn't. All I can say is that I am glad the street where my bar is located isn't too damaged." "Sorry about your bar," I apologized. After all, Cara had punched me out of the bar, so a few walls were now broken. "Already fixed," Lucifer replied with a wave of his hand. "So, are you ready to leave this universe?" I nodded. "I am. I have been ready to do so since the day I came here." "In that case, let's get your girl and your cat ready. But before that, one last drink," Lucifer offered, summoning a whiskey in the rocks to his right hand. "Last drink?" "You talk like we won't see each other again," I replied, taking the drink. "We will, but not as often. I met an interesting lady in a distant universe, a cop," Lucifer chuckled, summoning a drink for himself. "I pity the poor woman," I replied, taking a sip of my drink. "Pity? She would be lucky." Lucifer chuckled. Chapter 230, Chapter 214. David Lance POV. After a drink, Lucifer opened the portal to our universe. And with Raven and Dex by my side, I stepped through the threshold into my universe. The portal connected to a park, inside Gotham City. I knew it, I had come with Robin here before. I sighed, closing my eyes tightly. Finally, after so much pain, I was back. "Do you want to take some time?" Raven asked, putting a hand on my shoulder. "Not really," I replied. I don't even know how long it's been since I left. Lucifer had told me that time doesn't stay the same between universes, that sometimes a week can be a year or an hour, and that everything changes daily. Raven sighed. When we met again you were already gone for over a year. Use your magic to summon a newspaper, I suggested. Raven nodded, summoning a newspaper. And as she read it, I noticed her face go into shock. How bad is it? I asked. It's been almost 3 years since you left, Raven replied. 3 years. I can deal with that. Now to deal with the one watching me from the shadows. Batman, aren't you going to say hello? It's quite rude to gossip, and rather unbecoming of you, I smiled, sensing the Dark Knight's presence within the darkness of the forest. Bolt, I never lost hope you would come back, Batman said, emerging from the shadows. Glad to know you missed me, I smiled. He nodded his head in acknowledgement. I did, we all did. Are you okay? I looked at him and smiled. I've been better. Batman showing concern, this really is a different universe. Batman remained silent, and I could tell he was fighting against his primal need of interrogating me about where I had been, and what I had seen. It was in Batman's nature the need to know everything. Unfortunately for him, this adventure of mine would be something I would keep shut. So, who's your partner? I asked, letting Batman know I knew he hadn't come alone. It's me, a voice replied as a man stepped out of the shadows. Nightwing. Oh, new suit. Definitely an improvement, I smiled, and it was the truth. Anything was better than the Robin outfit. Thanks. Talking about outfits, what happened to yours? It's in a terrible state, Nightwing asked, his tone of worry evident in his voice. It's a long story, I replied with a shrug. One I rather not tell. Nightwing nodded, before taking a step forward. I know this might not be the best time, but seeing what happened last time, is now or never. Don't, I know you feel bad for the Joker thing, apology accepted, water under the bridge, I said, knowing where he was going. Honestly, after my time in that accursed universe, the Joker incident was something I could even learn to remember fondly. Still, I would like to apologize, Nightwing sighed. I'm sorry, for everything. I already forgave you. Though if you still want to do something for me, how about you pay for my dinner tonight? I haven't eaten anything good in a while, I replied with a smile. Nightwing chuckled. Sure, hot dogs sound good. I nodded, which made Raven shake her head with a smile. Bolt, I would like to speak with you alone, Batman interjected. I suppose he resisted his urge to butt in as long as he could, credit where it's due. Sure. At this, Dex began to yell at Batman, keeping his rings hidden, but threatening to use them if needed. But before he could jump and tear the poor Dark Knight apart, I reached down and petted my furry companion, letting him know everything would be okay. Once Dex calmed down and Raven took him off my arms, I walked with Batman to a secluded spot. I'll save you some time, I don't want to talk about my time out of here, now or ever, I signed, giving Batman a look that said I won't budge. If you don't want to talk it out with me, it's fine. But you need to open up to someone, Batman replied, and to his credit, he actually sounded concerned. I will if I ever feel like it. Was that all? I replied, tilting my head to the side. Batman sighed after a few moments. For the time being, and until proven you are in the right space of mind, you are suspended from any missions. Oh, about that. I quit, I replied with a smile. It was almost adorable he thought I wanted to take on missions, if anything my body language should have told him otherwise. Batman paused, his eyes and body language showing a vast array of emotions, with the most predominant one being his shock. You quit. I nodded, keeping my smile in place. I had a lot of time to think about this, about what I wanted to do. And, well, I came to the realization I'm done with this life. You once told me this life was one of suffering, and you were right. The point is, I'm done. Batman paused once again. If that's what you want, I will respect your choice. I can't say I understand why you came to this decision, but I can see whatever you lived through was enough to push you into this corner. I was done playing the role of a hero. Heroes, villains. I was done playing that game, that never-ending war of stupidity. I was tired. I had my fill in the injustice universe. The reality of everything was that nothing ever goes as planned. Wherever there was light, there would always be shadows to be found as well. A simple concept, a simple thing that stated that long as this broken system remained, nothing would change. My time in that accursed world had shown me that if I kept playing this game by the rules given to me, all would remain in the same state it was. Change was needed if I was to sever this idiotic cycle. Chapter 231, Chapter 215. David Lance POV. My reunion with Dinah was as emotional as anyone would have thought it would be. For the first time, in so long, I cried silently to the point I could not breathe or even think coherently. All the feelings I had been bottling up, just came out, flooding me without restraint. I was finally back home. After what felt like hours of crying in silence, and they might have just been, I shared with Dinah my decision. Oliver questioned if that was what I really wanted, not really pushing the subject but wanting to make sure I was certain. I reassured him, and my sister that was the case. I was tired, so very tired of the game. It was here when they asked me what I wanted to do then. For a few moments I didn't answer, eventually however I answered that I wanted to study, to become a better version of myself, that I wanted to fulfill my potential. A lie, partly at least. It was true that I wanted to study, but beneath it all, I had other plans, other projects I wanted no one to know about. Not even Raven. I wasn't certain my goals wouldn't drag me deeper into an abyss I wasn't ready to face. And I loved Raven, and my family too much to drag them into this. When things started to fall down, I wanted to be the sole focus of everyone's attention. But that was for another time. Not yet. I still had time to enjoy before starting to plan, before needing to act. Hiding something again? Raven asked calmly, floating into my room before settling in the bed. I nodded. I am indeed. Curious? I might tell you if you ask. Raven smiled. Everyone is entitled to their secrets. Besides, a bit of mystery makes you more attractive. If she had asked, I don't think I would held it together. I blinked, slowly turning to face her as I pushed my thoughts aside. Are you flirting with me? I am, Raven admitted. Would you look at that? It seems I'm a sucker for that kind of flirting. Consider me wooed then, I winked, wiggling my eyebrows. Raven chuckled. So, what now? If we are not heroes, what will we do? I'm the one that's quitting, Ray, I replied, a small frown on my face. Don't quit just because I am. David, Raven began but found herself without words. Ray, I know we usually do everything together, but not everything has to be like that. If you're gonna quit doing it, do it because it's something you want, not because it's something I did, I smiled, patting her gently on the head. I will still be here. I'm just not gonna be Black Bolt anymore. Raven sighed, her eyes looking down. I don't see the point of continuing without you. Do you still want to help others? I asked. Raven paused for a moment, considering my words. I could understand why she was hesitating so much. It was hard to begin something you started with someone alone. Eventually, however, she nodded her head. Yes, I still want to help others. It's just the idea of being a hero without you feels strange. You've been with me all this journey, so. I know, it's hard to start something or continue something without a part you always had, I smiled softly. But don't worry, you don't need me to be a hero. You can fly solo and still make a difference in people's lives. Raven smiled, her eyes twinkling with determination. She hugged me tightly and whispered, "Thank you for existing." "You're welcome," I replied, a small smirk playing on my lips. We stared at each other for a while, neither of us moving. After a while, Raven broke the silence. "I want to kiss you." I don't know if I should be worried or excited. What? Before I could do anything or process what she had said, Raven pulled me down, her lips against mine. My eyes widened in surprise, but the shock quickly melted into the kiss. I was scared. Excited. It was weird. We were in uncharted territory here. I didn't want to mess it up, and I wasn't sure what Raven was expecting from me and whatever was blossoming between us. I was slowly introducing myself to her physical side, but I was unsure how far I could go. Biting her lip gently, Raven pulled away from me, watching me, sizing me up. "I didn't quite get that," I signed. "Care to elaborate again?" Raven smiled, leaning in and kissing me again. "Sounds good to me." This was certainly something I never expected Raven to do, but I wasn't going to complain. Lucifer Morningstar POV. I suddenly feel proud. Could it be that the girl followed my advice when I told her men like it when women take charge? "Lucifer, you're staring into a wall, are you coming or not?" "Detective, don't be hasty." "Good things make themselves wait," I replied, getting my head back where it needed to be, with Detective Decker. This woman was a walking enigma, and I dare say I was enthralled by her. It was only a matter of time before she was with me. Anywho. Time to investigate a murder. Like a normal guy, meaning without omnipotent powers. This is gonna be so fun. "Lucifer, you're doing it again." Detective Decker sighed, rolling her eyes. David Lance POV. Time went by quickly after my return, and a lot of things happened in a very short period of time. To name a few, the team came to visit me, making my identity known to them. With my permission, of course. The meeting was somewhat bittersweet. I was fond of each of them, especially Superboy, who asked me why I was quitting, and, by the tone he was using, I could tell he was somewhat sad about my decision. My answer to that question was because I was, which he didn't seem to like. In the end, After a short reunion where we talked, they all accepted my decision without saying much. After that, I started studying. And soon enough, I managed to enroll in an Ivy University, the most prestigious university when it came to science. I suppose it helped that Oliver gave a big donation to the university and that my GPA was perfect. With my admission to the university, and eager to start, Oliver bought me a $10 million penthouse in Ivy Town where Ivy University was located, giving me alongside the apartment a credit card for any expenses. Telling me to dedicate myself to studying without worrying about anything else. I would start this new chapter of my life by earning a bachelor's degree in biology and genetics, specializing in metahuman studies. With that, I would have the necessary skills to start a path to replicate the 5U93R pill. I had brought several with me, all I needed was the skills to replicate them. Ivy Town, I read they have some of the best libraries in the world, Raven commented, snapping me out of my long reverie. If that's the case, I see a lot of dates ahead of us in our quest for the perfect library, I replied with a beaming smile. You were right, the team accepted me back without much fuss, Raven sighed. That had been a rough situation, one I had managed to control by talking to each member separately. It helped that they still held me in such high regard. The only one still on the fence was Kid Flash, not out of something for me, but because of how Raven had left. Regardless of that, however, he agreed to let bygones be bygones. I told you they would, I replied with a nod. I know you had something to do about that, so thanks, Raven replied. I feigned ignorance to that statement. I did not. But you're welcome. Raven chuckled, shaking her head. Ready to see your new apartment. Oliver had it decorated apparently. I frowned. That sounded like something bad waiting to happen. I mean, Oliver in his college years was a fuckboy, and I still haven't told him or my sister I am dating Raven. I feel my apartment will be a vaginal enchantment trap for gold diggers. How much do you want to bet your bed is heart-shaped? Raven asked. I frowned. Why would I bet on that? We both know it probably is. Chapter 232, Chapter 216. David Lance POV. And like the wind in a summer breeze, time passed. It has already been a few years since I came back to my Earth, and things have been going well. To name one of the few things that have happened, I got the telepathic speaker John Johns had been working on, which allows me to speak and appear normal thanks to a symbiotic relationship with something I had to install in my throat. I also finished my bachelor's degree in 2 years thanks to online accelerated degree programs, transfer credits, and other degree completion methods. As of right now, I'm working on my specialization in metahuman studies. On another note, I've been dating Raven for a little over 2 years, officially speaking. Even though we see each other very little thanks to our complicated schedules, we make it work. But despite all the positive changes in my life, there were still signs of trouble on the horizon, as I still had to play a part in the upcoming war. And I intended to break the stupid game all heroes and villains play. The signs of the war nobody seemed to notice had been increasing lately. I could tell by the way the pieces were moving across the board. Meaning the stakes were getting higher as well, and the risks greater. So, in my free time, I began to research every single thing I could find about metahumans, from public records to secret archives that had been hidden from the world for as long as they have been there. But as I kept digging, I started to uncover more questions than answers, proving my knowledge of the future wasn't entirely accurate. It seemed like there was an even deeper darkness hiding beneath the surface of what I thought I knew, something that threatened to rip apart everything. I had to admit, Vandal was a genius. Most of the things I had uncovered had been there for decades, meaning he had been planning this before most of the current heroes even existed. Unfortunately for him, I knew enough about his plans, and in time, I would know it all. How was school today? Raven asked, snapping me out of my long reverie as she entered my apartment with a portal. I smiled at her, pushing all of the thoughts I had to the back of my mind, and said, it was great, I've been making a lot of progress with my research project. What about you? Raven smiled, leaning forward for a kiss. Her lips were warm and soft, like a poem set ablaze. They fit together perfectly, with a sacred geometry that gave form to some greater and more perfect thing. I smiled, kissing her back, taking in the scent coming from her cloak, which I found very pleasant, like a wafting of cinnamon and warm vanilla. Any plans for today? Raven asked, to which I sadly nodded. I actually have 2 classes later today, one of which starts in an hour, I replied. But hopefully, I'll be able to wrap up my research project soon. After that, it won't be long before I'm done with my metahuman studies specialization. Raven sighed sadly, but with understanding. And instead of giving me the puppy eyes in order to get me to stay, she gave me another kiss and said, we can do something another day then. I smiled back at her and nodded in agreement before grabbing my backpack and heading out the door. Feel free to stay if you're free for the day though. I'll be back before dinner time. But I have a few reports to fill. Sometimes I have Nightwing, and by sometimes, I mean, all the time, Raven replied as I left. Later at the school cafe. Thanks again for helping me out with my research, Mr. Donaldson, I said, stepping into the private room of the privately owned cafe that Ivy University had. The room had a view of the city, while also being hidden from sight, which I found interesting. Mr. Donaldson chuckled, smiling at me, and said, always happy to help a diligent student. Especially if they have a perfect record like yours, Mr. Lance. I laughed, ordering a pot of tea for both of us, which arrived only a few minutes later. Do you know much about metahumans? Mr. Donaldson asked. I shook my head, taking a sip from my cup. I could say yes, and I suppose I do compared to most people, but the truth is, I don't know as much as I would like, which is why I keep researching. He chuckled again. That's good. Very good. That's exactly the answer I wanted. I raised an eyebrow. Excuse me. He leaned forward, taking a sip from his cup, and said, you see. You're not the only one looking for help. I'm also looking for just the right person to help me with the project. I sat back. You mean an intern, right? Indeed, normally I don't hire students unless they graduated in their specialization, but you have shown promise, he replied, causing me to smirk slightly. And before you worry, the internship is paid. Not that I need the money, but it's good to be offered. So, what would I be doing exactly? I asked. He beamed at my question and said, I want to create my own metahuman database, with everything about all known metahumans. My work is still in its infancy, but I have no doubts together we can make it work. I mean, not to get you an ego, but your research about metahuman variants is simply brilliant. The metahuman variant, wow, I hadn't given that research much thought for about a year. Well, I have to say I'm flattered. So what kind of data are we looking for exactly? Biometric data, special abilities and weaknesses, family ties and affiliations, anything and everything you can find on them. If we can collect enough data we could predict metahuman abilities before they even begin to appear. I raised an eyebrow at this. This sounded like a terrible project if someone with less than good intentions found it. Aren't you concerned about possible leaks, and what it could do to the metahumans in question? I have thought about that, which is why this project is being funded and protected not only by the university but by STAR labs as well. I suppose that's as secure as it gets. And now I have a reason to actually participate in this project. Well, in that case, count me in. Mr. Donaldson smiled at me and said, excellent. I look forward to working with you. Now, what were your questions? You know, the ones you wanted to ask. Back home. I entered my apartment, finding a note from Raven that said she had been called on a mission to help and stop Clayface, and that she could call me once it was all over. I smiled, putting the note inside one of my pockets before turning around saying, I know you're here, Slade, come out. Soon after I had said that, Slade stepped out from the shadows, wearing a long trench coat, his face shrouded by a dark hood. What made you think I was here? The window. You didn't cover your tracks there, on purpose I assume, I said, gesturing to the one near the kitchen. Ah, so you noticed. He said, fully stepping out of the shadows. Not bad, kid, you're getting better. Much better. I expect nothing less from my boss. Any updates on the whereabouts of Project Mach? I asked. Slade nodded. I have narrowed its location down to the East Coast. It's only a matter of time before I find it. I nodded. That was good news. And what about the other projects? Are they all moving along? Again Slade nodded. Yes, though some of them will take longer than others. They require more resources, and that takes time. I see. So when do you expect to have everything in order? Slade thought for a moment before answering. I'd say we should have everything ready by the end of the year, depending on how much information you can get from STAR labs. I nodded. That worked. Good. I'll admit it was pure luck that Mr. Donaldson recruited me. It saved me months in my timeline and the tedious process of applying for a job in STAR labs. Anything else I should know? Slade shook his head. No, that'll be all for now. I'll be in touch if anything else comes up. Oh, and by the way, Rose sends her regards. With that, Slade vanished back into the shadows, leaving me alone in my apartment. Rose Wilson, the girl who took it as a challenge to woo me after I had said I wasn't interested. Chapter 233, Chapter 217. Slade Wilson, Deathstroke POV. Flashback. When I got notice David had returned from his long trip, I took in my hands to see what he had been doing, and with the help of my daughter, Rose, we ambushed him. I was sure the battle would be on our side, and that I would get the answers I sought from him, however. In the blink of an eye, we were both defeated by David, easily. I remember the shock, the feeling of my blood dripping down my skin and onto my suit. I remember trying to stand up, but finding no strength to do so. I remember my body shutting down from the shock of my injuries. I remember my sword feeling colder than ever, but somehow being the only source of heat I had against the frigid air that now surrounded me. This wasn't the same kid I had once faced. This was an entirely different person. His eyes looked like those of a killer, a monster. I remember how he stood in front of me, his lips twitching in a smile that made me shudder. I remember feeling pathetic. I couldn't remember the last time anyone has made me shudder. But he was making me shudder, me, the Terminator, fearing a child. Utterly pathetic. I remember Rose's body lying on the ground, her eyes blank. I remember dragging my body, pushing through my pain, to kneel beside her. I remember feeling relieved she was still alive, just as well as I remembered her skin being cold, and how she bled from her chest where David had kicked her. She will survive, David said, slowly walking towards me. As he neared, I could feel a chill in my bones, an impending force ever approaching. It might have been the concussion I had, but I could feel it in the air. You've changed, I replied, coughing blood. A lot. He smiled a twisted smirk that hid a tired undertone. I have. He said. But that's neither here nor there. I chuckled, my body feeling limp and weak. So now what? We die. David shook his head. Not everything has to end, David said, his voice cold, his eyes burning with an emotion I found indescribable. You will live, as will your daughter. I coughed up blood. I see. Don't sound so surprised, I used to be a hero, you know. David replied. I remember snorting at that. He used to be, at least he was using the correct tense to describe his position now. I remember trying to reply, but being unable to as my body began to forcibly shut down. We will meet each other again, Slade, David said before turning around. Until then, take care. 1 month later, flashback. Being right to his word, he found us. But instead of attacking us, he made a proposition that I couldn't help but laugh at. I need people like you, Slade, he said, taking a seat. Help me destroy the game. He explained in detail how he wanted to destroy both heroes and villains by using their own rules. He wanted to break each faction by beating them at their own game. Why would I help you? I asked. And his answer was as deranged and hilarious as his proposition. Why not? You will get paid. I laughed. He had changed all right. Very well, so intrigued by his change and plan. I happily joined his crusade. This path he was taking promised an interesting future, and that was something I wanted to see through. Deathstroke POV, present. I sat above a building, hiding in its shadows as my daughter surveyed the area. Slade. Kid, you have your orders, why are you here? I said, turning to face Red Hood. Red Hood scoffed. Worry about your assignment, and let me worry about mine. What do you want, brat? I replied, glaring at him with annoyance. Need I remind you I don't share Batman's patience for annoyances? Red Hood growled. Don't bring that bastard into this. As for why I'm here, I have something I need you to give the boss. At this, he gave me a USB drive. What is this? I asked, grabbing the USB. That's none of your fucking business, Red Hood replied, crossing his arms. Boys, do I need to remind you that the boss left it clear we had to get along? Rose said as she came back from her patrol. I don't have a problem with you, I have it with your father, Red Hood replied. Be glad you are worth more alive than dead, I replied with a challenging smirk. Dad, shut it, Rose sighed. Give that to the boss, I have work to do, Red Hood said, before turning around and leaving. I looked towards Rose, the USB in hand. What do you think? Rose shrugged. Don't know, don't care. It's like you say, we don't get paid to ask questions. On that, I couldn't agree more. At the team's headquarters in Mount Justice. Nightwing sighed as he leaned back in his chair. It's been a long day. He said, rubbing his temples tiredly. Tell me about it, Superboy replied, cracking his knuckles. At least we managed to get the mission done without many problems. True. Nightwing nodded before his eyes focused on the USB drive sitting on the desk. But I still don't know what the USB that the assassin stole contains. Superboy raised an eyebrow. Do we know the guy that stole it? Dick shook his head. No, he's new. Or at least he hasn't been caught before. Do you think we should try to hunt him down? No, Nightwing replied firmly. I believe it best if we remain in the shadows for now. If we start chasing him we could scare whoever is behind the curtains. For the moment, all we can do is keep an eye on them, and act when the opportunity arises. Chapter 234, Chapter 218. David Lance POV. The world was rotten, heroes, villains, politicians, and businessmen. All playing an endless game, and meaningless game. The game, the structure that kept the wheel turning and turning, was impossible to break. I knew that much, it pained me to admit it. But, in a world where having powers is about as common as it gets, shattering the status quo was simply impossible to do. Nevertheless, it was possible to change it. To alter what's already there, to move it into a path of progression. In my time in the Injustice world, or Earth 22, I learned a lot of things. most of which I would rather forget, but if there was something I was grateful for, it was that this world had shown me how futile all of this was. An endless cycle that led to nowhere. Not a single group had the entire fault for this. Every part of the structure was as guilty as the last, the heroes, the villains, the businessmen, and politicians. They all benefited from this broken system. After all, without it, they wouldn't know what to do. Heroes needed villains to exist, and vice versa. Politicians needed villains and heroes to push their ideas, their campaigns for power, and the businessmen, well, they would reap gains out of it all. As much as it sickened me to admit it, this system worked flawlessly for the ones that collected the gains. It was a well-oiled machine that had been calibrated to do what it was meant to do perfectly. Well, it was time to calibrate it again. When I came back to my universe, I had time to think. To ponder on the situation of the world, and what I wanted to do about it. I no longer wanted to be a hero. But I couldn't let the world burn as I watched. This thought burned my mind constantly, until eventually I decided to take matters into my own hands. If no one wanted to fix the situation, I would. This, however, wasn't something I couldn't do alone. As strong as I was, there were limits to what one single person could achieve, and I was well aware of that. I had strength to face any kind of threat this world had to offer, but that alone meant nothing. If overwhelming strength was all one needed to change the world, Superman would have succeeded a long time ago. I needed a team, one that wasn't afraid to get their hands dirty, one that wasn't afraid of being hated by everyone. That reason alone disqualified the one I trusted the most, Raven. I loved her. With all my heart, I loved her. Which is why I couldn't let her be by my side in this, because when everything came crumbling down, I didn't want her to be there. Besides, I was certain she would have tried to talk me out of this, and I'll admit, she would have succeeded. With Raven out of the way, I set my aims into other horizons. Slade Wilson. Slade Wilson, better known by his codename, Deathstroke, was an elite mercenary, a war hero, and super soldier, considered to be the world's greatest and deadliest assassin. His skills gave him more merits in the army than most could count. However, the experiments they had put him through revealed in time a list of side effects, like his paranoia and his increased bloodlust. Sure, he had become stronger, faster, more agile, and had as well gained the capacity to use up to 90% of his higher brain functions, making him a tactical genius, but what had given him all of that, was also, slowly but surely destroying it. In short, what had made him the perfect soldier had also destroyed him. He was perfect for what I intended to do. So, I waited for him to come to me, just like I knew he would. And when he did, I made him an offer he couldn't decline. I offered him a solution to his problem. Slade laughed at my offer and plan. He didn't believe I could achieve either, but nevertheless joined. Perhaps it had been the fact that I had beaten him as if he was nothing, or that I hadn't lied when I was talking to him, but something had pushed him to join me, and whatever that was, I was glad. With Slade came his daughter, Rose Wilson, or Ravager, who joined my cause with her father, though I wasn't sure if she had joined to follow her father or out of her crush on me. As for Slade and Rose doubting my words, I didn't mind it at all. After all, I was one to support proof over words. I would show them I was a man of my word, in time. With Slade and Ravager on my side, I set my aims for my next target, Red Hood. At first, I wasn't sure if he existed in this universe or not. I knew for a fact Jason Todd existed, but that wasn't a guarantee Red Hood would. But, I still searched for him. I had nothing to lose but time. Luckily for me, the DC universe loved to repeat iterations and events across all realities, and I found him, in the first place I had looked, in the League of Shadows. It wasn't easy to convince him, it took some talking, but knowing what I did about it, it was easy to know what buttons to push. Next was Poison Ivy and Harley Quinn. They were both villains, sure, but that wasn't always the case. More than not in many universes they would end up joining the heroes, Harley more than Ivy. I knew that, just as well as I knew that I could manipulate Ivy through Harley. I wasn't exactly proud that I intended to use Harley's infatuation in me to get what I wanted, but it had to be done. Be that as it may, things weren't always so simple. Out of everyone I had recruited so far, those two proved to be the most difficult ones, so to speak. Ivy tried to kill me, and Harley, while happy to see me, was hesitant, thinking I had abandoned her. I took my time explaining things to them as I dealt with Ivy, tying her up before putting a power-dampening collar on her. From there, it was all a matter of how I presented my idea to them, and my goals, as well as what they could both gain from it. I targeted Ivy's insecurities about her plans, her goals, and how she knew that someone would always stop her, offering her an alternative, if she was open to hearing me out. Her face was one of complete confusion, and I couldn't blame her, for her, until now I was a hero, yet here I was trying to talk her into joining me. At first, she assumed I was trying to make her a hero, to which she laughed at me. I laughed back, before going a bit into my goals. Her expression of mocking and defiance vanished as her face darkened. That doesn't sound like something a hero would do. Those were her exact words. The world has enough heroes and villains as it is. That was my reply. Now willing to listen, if anything out of curiosity, Ivy remained silent as I continued to explain, answering her questions and more. My plan benefited her, more than she would out loud admit. After all, destroying the status quo would open a window for her goal, saving the green of the planet. I could see the grinds on her head moving, as she weighed her options, and it wasn't until Harley said she would join, that the stubborn Ivy decided to as well. Now, there was only one last target on my list. One that I would have to ease into all of this, one step at a time. Amanda Waller. Finding her was easy enough if you knew where to look, and once I did, I visited her, in costume, my new costume, and had a heart-to-heart with her, leaving her with more questions than answers. Now, I simply had to wait long enough for Waller's paranoia to do its thing, and when it did, I would visit her again. But that could wait. Waller's role wasn't necessary right now, it would be when I started to actively act, but until then, my team was complete. Chapter 235, Chapter 219. David Lance POV. My little internship with Dr. Donaldson began the very next day we had our talk at the cafe. Working with Dr. Donaldson proved to be enlightening, for as clueless as the doctor was, he was a very brilliant man, with many useful connections. One of them was Dr. Sorling Roquette, the brilliant scientist who invented the fog, making her the head of nanotechnology advancement at the moment. During my internship with Dr. Donaldson, one of the many things I intended to do was learning as much as I could from Dr. Sorling. I wanted to understand and master nanorobotics, and she was the best candidate to help do so. Dr. Roquette. What a pleasure to have you here. Dr. Donaldson greeted us as the young scientist entered our lab. Dr. Roquette rolled her eyes. You called me here. Dr. Donaldson chuckled, waving Roquette's attitude. It's still a pleasure, nevertheless. It's an honor to meet you, Dr. Sorling, I said before Dr. Donaldson could say another word. I have read a lot about your work, and I find it most enlightening. Dr. Sorling smiled warmly at that, her eyes twinkling. Thanks. I read your research about metahuman variants, and I find it fascinating. In a world where we don't know enough about superpowers, your study was groundbreaking. I smiled. Thanks, though I have to admit that if I keep getting compliments from such renowned scientists every time I meet them, I might grow an ego. Dr. Donaldson laughed, a booming, loud laugh. Well, that's good. A genius without an ego is no genius. I say. Dr. Sorling sighed, shaking her head. Don't pay attention to him, keep your head grounded, genius or not. I will, I replied. So, would you like a coffee or something? We don't have much here in terms of beverages, but I'm sure I can whip something out. Dr. Sorling shook her head. No, but thanks. I already had my dose of coffee for the day. She sighed at this. I'm afraid that any more coffee might be detrimental to my brain. I chuckled. Understandable, I mean, I'm pretty sure the scientific community, every parent in the world, and college students trying to finish their homework keep the coffee industry strong. At this, both Dr. Sorling and Dr. Donaldson laughed. So, what brings you here, Miss Sorling? I asked, walking back to my station. Dr. Donaldson let STAR Labs know you were interested in using my research to aid yours, Dr. Sorling replied. Something about using the ability my nanobots have to collect information to help catalog metahumans and their powers. I nodded. Oh, so that's why you're here today. I honestly didn't expect much when I commented that to Dr. Donaldson. That was a lie, a blatant one at that. I know very well how hard it is for Dr. Donaldson to keep his mouth shut, just as well as I knew that the ones behind funding his research would be interested in such an idea. Dr. Sorling smiled. Well, STAR Labs is very invested in your growth in the scientific community. They think, as I do, that you will make great things in time. I beamed at her. Well, I'm about to blush. Oh, is this flirting I see? Dr. Donaldson gasped like a parent trying to embarrass their kid just for the heck of it. I rolled my eyes at him. While there's no doubt Dr. Sorling is a very attractive woman, I have a girlfriend. Not only that, but it would be extremely inappropriate to pursue such a relationship while working together. Dr. Sorling nodded in approval with a small blush. I'm glad to know someone here understands the importance of such standards. I guess Dr. Sorling finds me attractive. That might work to my advantage. After all, people are more open to those they find in layman's terms hot. I would however keep it professional. Even if I wanted to exploit my looks for my own gain, I didn't want Raven castrating me. I like my bits where they belong, attached to me. You two are no fun, Dr. Donaldson sighed with a pout, before turning back to his station. Well, as I was saying, I got notice you were interested in my research, so here I am, Dr. Sorling said, breaking the silence by clearing her throat. I nodded. I'm not entirely sure how your nanobots work. I read your research and most of your published findings, but I still lack a fundamental understanding of how they work. I paused, making sure Dr. Sorling was hooked so far. But, I have read enough to understand the vast array of possibilities your nanobots provide as a whole. Dr. Sorling nodded. I understand you wish to see if it's possible to make it so my nanobots collect bio-information in controlled amounts, right? I nodded. I know it's possible. Just not possible for me to do so. That would be more in your realm of expertise, but yeah, that's basically what I want to do. Dr. Sorling remained silent for a moment, contemplating. You're right about it being possible. I would need to build an entirely new working model of my nanobots for that to work though, but I can do that. The problem is making it safe for people. A little mistake could mean the nanobots deciding to collect all organic matter instead of what was previously stated. I nodded. That was an understandable concern. Which is why I wanted to speak with an expert in the subject. The last thing we want is a swarm of flesh-eating nanobots. Indeed, Dr. Sorling replied, shuddering at the thought. That would be catastrophic. But if done right, we could help people before they manifest their powers, creating contingencies to avoid the worst possible outcomes, I replied with a sigh. Just a year ago, a teenager in Colombia got his powers, and accidentally ended up killing his family. He burned them alive without even knowing what was happening. Dr. Sorling looked down in sadness. I can't imagine how that must feel. Neither can I replied. Which is why I want to find a way to help people in that kind of situation. Not only it helps the innocents, saving them from unnecessary suffering, but it would help prevent and identify crime more effectively. I think I understand what you two wish to accomplish now, Dr. Sorling nodded. I will let my superiors know I wish to be part of this research. I smiled. Thanks, we would be most fortunate to have you on board. Good, all the pieces are falling into place one by one. Slade Wilson POV. I ran through the shadows of the night, making no sound as I stalked my target. I had been tracking him for weeks now and I was finally ready to make my move. He had been avoiding me with his various tricks and gadgets, making my mission harder than it had to be, but I was confident that I had finally cornered him. My target was no other than Lex Luthor himself, who had been aware I was hunting him for a while now and had used his vast resources to stall the inevitable. Having taken care of his many guards, I entered his office, leaving Rose to take guard. Then, before he could use his silver-tongued mouth to try and say something, I grabbed him by the shoulders and spun him around before pinning him into a wall. Are you sure whatever you're getting paid is worth it? Luthor inquired cockily. I smiled under my mask. Don't worry that pretty little bald head of yours about that. I'm not here to kill you, not yet at least. Luthor sneered. So you only came here to make an enemy out of me? Well, I'll say that super soldier serum has seriously messed you up. Maybe, I said confidently. But that's not the point of today's visit. Luthor looked at me for a moment before saying. Fine, what is that you want? I want Project Match, I replied. I know it's somewhere in this city, and I need you to guide me to it. Luthor raised an eyebrow. So you are the one that has been looking for that. And pray tell, why would I help you with that? I chuckled. Wanna find out? We both know that if you kill me, you won't leave this building alive, Luthor replied with a smile. And in the rare occurrence you do, well, how long do you think you will be able to keep that head of yours in place with every bounty hunter after it? You do know that if I die, a large sum of money will automatically be put on your head. Right, one of the reasons very few attacked Luthor at all because if they did, his contingency plan would activate, offering more money than anyone could hope to gain, in exchange for avenging him. I know that. I know that you think that alone would be enough to take me down, I replied, dropping Luthor to the ground as I began to walk around his fancy office. And I'll be the first one to admit, it might have worked a year ago or so. But you see, my current boss is rather resourceful. Luthor said nothing, simply staring at me. Go ahead, call your men, the beasts you have waiting for your command, I said, walking towards Luthor. I'm waiting, Luthor. If you insist, Luthor smiled, before pressing a button on his desk. 1, 2, 3, 4. And nothing. Right about now, you might be wondering, why has no one come? I grinned under my mask. Look at your cameras, and see why. Luthor remained silent, complying with what I had said as he pressed another button on his desk to see the cameras. Each camera revealed what had happened to his many biological weapons on site, all of them butchered. Project Match, you said? Right. Luthor said after a moment or two. That can be easily arranged. Chapter 236, Chapter 220. David Lance POV. Project Match. Or this Earth's Bizarro, I suppose. Slade had managed to acquire Match, with a bit of help from Luthor. Obviously, I didn't trust Luthor to give us Match without setting a trap or two to get back at us. That was never going to happen. It was in his nature to get the last laugh. What he didn't know was that whatever he was planning, I was ready for. One of the few good things my time in Earth 22 had provided, was my understanding of the technology in said universe, which was leagues above the one on this Earth. I didn't know enough to replicate everything I had seen in my time there, but I knew enough to work my way around things. Besides, I didn't need to. The ring's decks carried within them a vast database of information I could use and had used to improve my own gadgets. Thanks to that, I was more than prepared to deal with Luthor's tactics. Like detecting the many tracking devices the pod Match was delivered to me as well as the many tracking devices within Match himself. I can't imagine Luthor gave this up without a fight, I said, looking at Slade, who simply chuckled. He didn't have much of a choice, Slade replied, before giving me a look. New suit. I chuckled under my mask. Yeah, call it Prototype 1. I've been working around a few things, and this is the first of many results, so to speak. I do have one question, Slade said, his attention fixed on the pod in front of us. What use could you possibly have for this deformed thing? Deformed was the correct adjective for Match right now. Thanks to his genetic makeup, which was as stable as a drug addict, he had become disfigured, getting paler. Not only that, but his left leg and the left side of his face had swollen in a perturbing manner, and his right arm had become oversized. All in all, Match was an abomination right now. I could have understood this in the past if you had intended to use him for what he's worth. Muscle power, Slade continued, eyeing Match like one would a piece of trash. But the thing is, that's not really necessary anymore. So why? Right. I see his point. He was saying that with 5U93R, dumb muscle was no longer necessary. And he was right. While I had yet to crack the formula to make the pills, it was only a matter of time before I did, so dumb muscle was no longer necessary. However, dumb muscle wasn't the reason I wanted Match. He was the closest thing to a perfect clone Superman had, and well, let's say I needed a Kryptonian to enter Superman's Fortress of Solitude. Beyond that, however, I had my reasons to have Match. One of them being it wasn't bad to have a Kryptonian in your corner, and that I was almost certain that with him I would be able to crack the 5U93R pill once and for all. I don't plan to use him as dumb muscle, Slade, I replied, leaning towards the pod. I have other plans for him. Slade looked at Match once again. Good luck with that. So, what now, boss? I want you and Ivy to collect as much information as you can about the Krylodians, I replied, giving Match one last look before turning to face Slade. I know enough about them as a species, so what I want to know is exactly what they are doing. Those little pests have been on my radar for a while now, though I never gave them much importance, Slade replied. They hardly represent a threat to our plans, I replied. If anything, their research in human genetics would help us. And might I know why you are sending Ivy with us? Slade asked. He didn't sound offended, but nonetheless wanted to know why I thought he needed more than himself and his daughter to accomplish this mission. Ivy's ability to control plants will help you collect intel more easily. After all, she can hear and see what her plants see, I replied, taking a small pause. Not only that, her intensive knowledge in biochemistry and genetics will prove useful when collecting data, saving you and as a whole us a lot of time. I see. In that case, it will be a pleasure to work with her, Slade replied without emotion. I do recommend you take some precautions. Ivy has a short temper, and while she obeys my orders more than not, one can never be too careful, I added with a mirthful chuckle. If I didn't know you any better, I would assume you were insulting me, Slade snorted. I know very well what to expect from the likes of Ivy, and she's not dumb enough to test my patience. So don't worry, we will work just fine. Leave it to Slade to take any warning as an insult to his skills. Oh well, whatever works for him. If you say so, I replied, my eyes back on Match. I will let Ivy know about the mission. Very well, Slade replied before starting to make his way out of the office, only to stop before reaching the door and turning around. Oh, I almost forgot. Little Red left you this. At this, Slade pulled a USB flash drive out of his suit before tossing it at me. He said it contains information you might find useful. He didn't elaborate further. I looked at the USB drive and smiled under my mask. If this was what I thought it was, then my moves in the political area of things were about to begin. Good luck fixing that mess, Slade added before walking out the door. Mess, huh? I muttered, looking at Match's deformed body. What an accurate way to describe him. Don't you worry, I will fix you up. At the very least I can say with certainty that I can't fuck you up more than you already are, it is how they say. Once you are at your lowest you can only go up. It would take some time and resources, but I was certain it was within my reach to fix this failed project, turning him into what they had originally intended him to be. Be that as it may, even I could admit this would be no easy project. He was broken both physically and mentally. I had my work cut out for me. Haley, please make the necessary arrangements for our guest over here, I said through the comms on my suit. On it pudding. I sighed. And you don't have to call me by my fake name when we are alone. It feels weird. Haley was simply a nickname I had given Harley to avoid being discovered in case communications were ever in jeopardy. We talked about the reason behind your name. Please, stick to it, I replied. Fine. Harley was both a pleasant ally and an unpleasant one. When she was driven to do something, she would follow instructions perfectly, she would even act normal if the situation required her to act like she wasn't crazy. Sadly, she wasn't perfect all the time. So, where do you want me to take the yo? Holy fucking cock, that's ugly. Harley said as she entered the room, her face contorting into one of shock and disgust at Match. Are you sure you don't want me to take that into the incineration room? No, I'm sure, I replied, finding her reaction somewhat amusing. Well, you're the boss, Harley replied, walking towards Match's pod, only to stop a few inches from it. Are you sure whatever that thing has isn't contagious? I am, I replied. Okay, just wanted to make sure, Harley nodded, before activating the pod's movement system to follow her. Be careful, that thing inside is only that calm when in stasis. Harley looked at me and then at Match, giving a brief nod. Don't you worry, Pudding, I will treat it like it is my own deformed child. Lex Luthor POV. Hundreds of millions of dollars lost, and all in a single day. I was well aware of Deathstroke's skills, and how frightening his reputation was. But even then, he shouldn't have been able to kill all my genetically engineered weapons with such ease. Some of them had physical endurance comparable to that of Project KR. Yet he had sliced through them one by one with his daughter like they were nothing. It didn't add up. In the recordings, Deathstroke and his daughter moved and attacked, showing prowess that far surpassed what they should have had. That kind of power was leagues above the super soldier program he had been a part of, by a lot. I would know, I had researched that little thing a long time ago. My computer blinked awake, showing an incoming call I had been waiting for. Luthor. Savage, you took your time to call me back, I replied with a sigh. Did you receive the information I sent over to you? Yes, Vandal replied after a long pause. And what do you intend to do about it? I asked. For the moment, nothing, Vandal replied. We know nothing about this new threat we have on our horizon. Moving against it without anything is a foolish endeavor. As much as I hated to admit it, he was right. Whoever Deathstroke was working for, knew more about us than we did about him. I suppose I already knew the answer to that, I sighed, rubbing my temples. On the same note, did you see the videos I sent you? Yes. Was Vandal's reply. Whoever we are dealing with, enhanced Deathstroke and Ravager to a point very few could possibly hope to match, I stated. It might be in our best interest to figure out how. Perhaps it would, Vandal replied. But for now, it's best we focus on learning what this unknown wants. If we play our cards right, we might secure a new ally for the light, otherwise, like everything standing in our way, it will be eliminated. I could see the benefits of making an ally out of this mysterious threat. But it was too soon to tell if it would be worth it. Very well, I replied, taking a deep breath. I doubt we will see much of this threat in the foreseeable future. Deathstroke left it very clear that Match was his primary objective. See what you can find about Project Match, and what could have made someone move to acquire it, Vandal replied after a moment. It might be a long shot, but we might find what this unknown wants through that. A very long shot indeed. How could we hope to solve a problem if we didn't even know the question? That was our situation right now. We knew nothing of this threat, nothing at all, other than whoever we were dealing with wanted Project Match. I'll see what I can find, I don't promise anything though, I replied, hanging up the call. I suppose if anything this unknown has given me a newfound interest in that failed project. I was for the first time in years, truly captivated. Now, let's see what Mr. Unknown finds so valuable about you, Match. Chapter 237, Chapter 221. David Lance POV. Today, some League's strongest members, Superman, Wonder Woman, Martian Manhunter, Batman, Hawkwoman, and the Green Lantern John Stewart, had left Earth to try and resolve the interplanetary dispute they had peacefully, accompanied by Hawkman and Icon. The reason for this was that under Savage's control, they had attacked the aliens that were now invading Earth, the Krolotonians. I had no doubt they would clear their names. Eventually. But in the meantime, I would make the most of this. Without the League at full power, some of the items on my agenda would prove easier to accomplish, like collecting what I wanted from Superman's Fortress of Solitude. I had long ago discovered where the fortress was, the problem lay in entering. The fortress was made so that only Kryptonians could enter, or more specifically, only those of the House of El. Though I doubted Superman had set the security configurations to block any other Kryptonians, seeing as was under the assumption Superboy and him were the only ones remaining. I intended to exploit that belief today. Using Match, I had collected Superman's DNA. It hadn't been a simple matter to do though, Match's genetic makeup was so deteriorated that I had to reconstruct most of the samples I had collected to acquire something usable. It wasn't a perfect fix, but it would be enough to enter the fortress, as it would read as Superboy's DNA, allowing me entrance under his permissions to the fortress. So, with my DNA sample, I traveled to the fortress. Once there I stepped up to the fortress and inserted a small vial with a drop of Match's DNA blood into the panel of my suit before nearing the door. The security system scanned me, for a moment before the light of the scanner turned blue, and the doors slowly opened. Glad it had worked, I stepped through the doors. Inside I was greeted by a computer AI that identified me as Con-El, before politely requesting me to state my purpose for this visit. I'm here to collect all the data about Kryptonian DNA, I said, using a voice changer to sound exactly like Superboy. I wasn't sure how advanced the AI was, so it was better to be careful. The AI remained silent for a moment before saying, "As you wish." I smiled at the response under my mask before accessing the Fortress computer, where I proceeded to download all the information I wanted with the assistance of the AI. As the information was downloaded into my storage unit, I looked in mild shock at how much data was being transferred. The amount of information I was downloading easily entered the realm of zettabytes, meaning it was safe to assume the entirety of the Fortress data went leagues above that. Perhaps all the information this Fortress had to offer entered the realm of millions of yottabytes. Such a waste. If Superman really wanted, he could probably solve most of the problems this planet has, and I'm not even talking about villain problems. From what I could gather by just going over some unrelated files to my current mission, Superman had the tools to cure every disease if he truly wanted, at least on Earth. Granted, one could argue he was so stupid he wasn't even aware he could do such a thing. I sighed. One problem at a time. Download complete. Is there anything I can assist you with, Kal-El? The AI asked. Erase today's recordings and records of my visit, I replied, wondering if Superman had granted Superboy such permissions. I'm afraid that's out of your granted permissions. Without Kal-El's authorization, I cannot do that. So he allows Superboy to access all data, but touching his recordings is a no-go. What a weird set of rules he has. I chuckled. I suppose it was too wishful of me to think I would get all I wanted without leaving a trace. It doesn't matter though, by the time they figure out someone came here, it will be already too late. Duly noted, I replied, making my way to the door. In my lab, I started to go over some of the data I had collected. It was easy to see why the Light's attempts to close Superman had failed so miserably. The more I read, the more it became evident that without Kryptonian technology, cloning a Kryptonian was simply out of the realm of possibilities. The genetic makeup was marvelously complex. It was fascinating, extremely so. Though to give the Light some credit, it was also out of current reach to perfect what they had failed to do. I had no doubts that eventually I would be able to fully comprehend Kryptonian biology. That, however, didn't mean I would be able to do something with that knowledge. To make use of this, I needed two things. 1. Knowledge, which I had acquired, and 2. The right technology to make use of that knowledge, technology that sadly I didn't have at my disposal. Even with the power rings, making use of what I was learning to the fullest extent of what it could offer was simply not doable. I didn't have the necessary means to solve that particular conundrum. In fact, not even the Fortress of Solitude had what I needed to make use of this. Sure, it had a massive collection of knowledge, but not the technological tools I needed. I knew someone who did though. Metron. His interdimensional vault had a vast collection of artifacts that most thought were lost to time, his collection even extending to Kryptonian technology. The question was, how to get what I wanted from Metron. Making an alliance with him was in layman's terms a stupid endeavor. The man's sole interest was knowledge to the point everything for him was an experiment. Meaning that if I approached him, there were only two outcomes that would come out of that. 1. He outright disregards me. Or 2. He would use what I sought as a path to experiment on me. And experimenting when it came to Metron went beyond strapping someone into a table. A testament to his character is how he had dealt with Razor. He had manipulated him for 4 years, giving him false leads to his quest, in order to both calculate how long it would take for him to lose hope and to get the opportunity to study the power of both the red ring and the blue ring. His machinations to obtain knowledge were such that they had earned him quite a bad reputation among the new gods, to the point most of them don't even need any explanation for an altercation once they hear he is involved. I suppose I could play his game. The one thing Metron had never had to deal with is someone experimenting on him the same way he had with others. So, if I played my cards right, the new god might be taken by surprise. Chapter 238, Chapter 222. David Lance POV. Dr. Sorling's research and study in the area of nanotechnology was extraordinary. It was very extensive and through, even when it was clear she was barely scratching the surface this science had to offer. Though I was glad we were in the stone age of nanorobotics, the last thing we needed was an Amazo like the one that came to be in the Justice League Unlimited universe. I honestly doubted anyone but those who governed reality could stop such a being. But that was beyond the point. I neither intended to reach that level nor it was my goal to use nanorobotics that way. My interest in nanorobotics was another. What I intended to gain with them was the ability to disassemble and reassemble matter. If you ask the average person, they would say, "But isn't that something they can already do?" And the answer is yes, but not as you think they do it. Most people think nanobots can make anything out of anything, and that's fundamentally wrong. To elaborate on that, nanotechnology can't transform living tissue into materials that aren't found in said tissue. You can program the nanobots to take what's there and utilize it in a different manner, but you can't make them turn the materials at hand into something entirely unrelated to them. That same example applied to everything when it came to assembling and disassembling matter with them. Another misconception was that nanobots can take over everything or impart limitless energy, without any source of power. That was simply not the case. Nevertheless, even if the usage of nanotechnology was more limited than most would assume, it was still a very powerful tool. One that I intended to use. I had already memorized all of Dr. Sorling's data, some of which she wasn't aware I had taken. In fact, I was already working on some prototypes, trying to recreate her work. So, I had managed to recreate her first experiments with little to no problems, not that I expected any. Her first experiments were, as anyone would expect, very rudimentary, basic in essence. The difficulty would only increase from that point on. But I had time to work things out. "You've been busy," Ivy said as she entered my lab, her eyes fixed on my screens. "A busy mind is a productive mind," I replied, turning around to greet her. "I didn't expect you here so early. Is there anything wrong?" Ivy shook her head. "Not exactly." I remained silent, waiting for her to continue. "While we were investigating the Krylodians, we became aware of an island they were inhabiting as their base," Ivy continued, taking a seat in one of my chairs. "Slade, his spawn, and I entered the place unseen, and remained in the shadows gathering as much information as we could." "I feel a but coming," I interjected. Ivy nodded. "In our time there, we discovered that the light was founding the Krylodians, with Black Manta and his little brat as their representatives. I was wondering when Aqualad would make his debut as a fake villain. I knew he had been undercover for a while now, but to the eye of the heroes, he was simply missing. Though the timing of it all was off. If I remembered correctly, this revelation should have come a bit earlier. I suppose alterations to the timeline as I know it are to be expected, seeing the version of this universe I knew was one without me. I will keep that in mind from now on to avoid any surprises. I suppose heroes are simply turning bad nowadays," Ivy chuckled, looking at me. "Adorable, but no," I replied. "Aqualad is still a hero, he's just deep undercover." I informed Slade of this. "I would have expected him to tell you." Ivy rolled her eyes. "We don't really talk unless it is absolutely necessary. I know you don't like him, or anyone outside Harley, but do try to get along," I replied with a sigh. "That's not entirely true, I don't hate you," Ivy replied. "Unlike most of the planet's population, you are tolerable." "Well, that's a compliment, I suppose." "Thanks, I guess," I replied. "So, as I was saying, in our time there we discovered the light was funding the Krylodians," Ivy resumed, taking back her report where she had left it. "Eventually escapes. And well, we weren't the only ones to find our way to that place. The team, as you call it, arrived. To summarize the rest, the team confronted Aqualad, but he managed to escape, not before planting a bomb to obliterate the entire place. That's a shame. The information those little bastards had was quite useful, and I had wanted to collect it before this event happened." "That's a shame," I sighed. "Ivy, I'm glad you managed to escape before the explosion turned you to dust," Ivy said, crossing her arms. "To congratulate you on that would be to insult you, and everyone that went on that mission," I replied with a shrug. "Or you mean to tell me your life was really in danger?" "Fair enough," Ivy chuckled lightly. "Did you guys manage to collect any data in your time there?" I asked, not really keeping my hopes very high. "Some," Ivy nodded. "Though I seriously doubt it will push your research in any shape or way. Back to square one with the Krylodians, it seems." "Well, there's always another base waiting," I replied, already having a few ideas about where to send them to find the Krylodians. I knew for a fact Queen Bee was working with them. "I suppose," Ivy replied, turning her attention to one of my computer screens on the wall. "How's your deformed little pet doing?" Honestly, it was getting old the fact that everyone was disgusted by Match's appearance. Isn't part of the feminist movement not to judge others based on their appearance? I replied in an amused yet annoyed tone. "I find most meat-based life forms utterly disgusting," Ivy shrugged. "You are barking at the wrong tree here." "Barking at the wrong tree? Was that a pun? Was that a pun?" I asked. Ivy rolled her eyes. "I won't dignify that with an answer." I chuckled. "So how is your pet doing?" Ivy asked again. "I haven't done anything to him yet, so I'm keeping him in a stasis to slow further genetic deterioration," I replied. The pod he was in, which I had modified to improve its performance, kept his body in the best state possible, slowing down the unavoidable side effects of the bad craftsmanship behind his creation. Sadly, As I had stated before, all this did was slow down the aggressive deterioration of his cells. Which was something that would not stop until I found a way to fix him on a cellular level. I estimated that I had at most a year before the damage done to his body so far became irreversible, and around 2 years before fixing him became impossible. Do you honestly believe you can fix him? Ivy asked. And I don't mean this as an insult. I find your research brilliant as a scientist myself, but even then. 2 compliments from Ivy in a day, well, that's something I wasn't prepared at all to receive. I know what you're trying to say, and the truth is, that even if I manage to become an expert in Kryptonian genetics, the technology available to us makes that knowledge useless, I replied with a chuckle. Ivy frowned. Then what's the point? One step at a time, Ivy, I replied. First, I become an expert, then I tackle the next problem. Ivy sighed. At this point, I don't even know why I bother, you are a very stubborn individual. The world wasn't built by compliant people, I replied. I suppose that's right, Ivy conceded. Anyway, I'll leave you to do your research, I will go and see what Harley is doing. I will be contacting you for your next mission soon, and before you ask, yes, Slade will be there, so don't bother trying to convince me otherwise, I replied as Ivy left my room with an annoyed expression at my last comment. Oh well, back to my work. However, I froze, mid-keystroke, as my phone buzzed from the desk. Taking a deep breath, I glanced down at the screen and saw a notification from my Raven. A text message. Smiling, I opened the text. Do you want to watch a movie tonight? Raven Goth Babe. Chuckling at the name I had on my phone for her, one she wasn't particularly happy about, I replied. Sounds good, I'll pick up the snacks on my way home. My apartment or yours? Around 5 seconds later. Mine. Raven Goth Babe. Very well then, I'll be waiting for you in my apartment. I replied. Let me know once you're there. Love you. Raven Goth Babe. I smiled, sending her a thumbs up emoji before putting the phone down, and looking at my screens. I guess I will continue with this another day. Chapter 239, Chapter 223. David Lance POV. Today, I was exhausted. The past few months, when I wasn't focusing on my research or, in preparing for the inevitable, I had been training as much as I could to the point of exhaustion. I had my reasons to do this, even though I was already plenty strong, one of them being that I knew very well I had yet to really tap into my powers. My main ability lay in my power to harness the electrons around me in order to create devastating results. After some very intrusive tests, I have been able to discover and confirm a few interesting things about my body. For one, I had discovered that the speech center of my brain contained a unique organic mechanism that was able to generate an unknown particle that interacted with the electrons I absorbed to create the phenomena behind my voice. This meant that control, at least to a point, was possible, but not without some sort of external aid. The original Black Bolt had a metallic, fork-shaped antenna on his head that allowed him to focus and channel his powers in more directed and less destructive ways. Based on that alone, I had theorized the antenna of his head was the one responsible for monitoring the speech center of his brain, allowing him to create a more controlled version of the phenomena behind his powers. I had also theorized that if such a thing was possible to accomplish, other things such as enhancing my own physical strength beyond normal limits, and other attributes could be easily accomplished using the same method of control and redistribution of power. I had been working on these theories for some time now, and while I had yet to reap any gains from it, I was making steady progress. My first prototype, S0.1, short for Solution 0.1, had demonstrated the ability to funnel my power into a more channeled result, though it was far from usable. Solution 0.1 required rest between uses, usually between 6 to 8 hours, making the prototype useless for anything other than research. I wasn't worried though, I was making progress, not as fast as I would want, but I was in the right direction. Besides trying to acquire a semblance of control of my powers, I was training because I knew I still lacked some powers the original Black Bolt had. Once whatever had clouded my memory had vanished, I had been able to remember multiple things about Black Bolt. I had never been a very big fan of Black Bolt as a comic character, but even then I had come across multiple bits of knowledge about him in my past life. Some were questionable, but others had left a mark on my mind. Such as the following. On multiple occasions throughout the comics, Black Bolt had shown the ability to manipulate matter and energy to an unknown degree. Some of the feats he had demonstrated while doing this were things such as the ability to transmute water into ice, and creating multiple toys out of thin air. I could only theorize he had done such things by rearranging the molecular structure of already existing matter in order to obtain such results. Now, how exactly he had done that? Well, that was still something I was trying to figure out. Beyond that, Black Bolt had also shown the ability to fly, which I'll admit had taken me a bit to figure out how exactly. Thanks to my research with Solution 0.1, and a few theories I was pretty sure weren't theories anymore, I had concluded how such a thing was possible. Black Bolt was able to fly because he had harnessed the unknown particles his brain generated. From there it was easy to deduce that he was using said particles to create anti-gravitons which would easily enable him to defy gravity itself, ergo giving him the ability to fly. That, of course, only worked flawlessly on paper. I wasn't sure how to implement any of that into use, yet. I was certain the solution to these conundrums was within the completion of Project Solution. Every theory I had was based on that, the little thing that had given Black Bolt the ability to better control his powers. I estimated I would complete this project by the end of the year, give it or take. After all, I was occupied with other projects as well, which were all just equally important as this project was for me. Having control of my powers was certainly something I craved very much, but it wasn't something that would push me out of my current goals. I was plenty strong as I was right now, there was no rush to make that particular project my priority. As I was right now, there weren't many individuals that posed a threat to my entire operation. And for the ones that did, having more raw power wouldn't make much of a difference anyways. Clarion, for example, was on top of that list. The point being, I had no rush with any of my particular objectives as of now, personal or not. You called. Slade said, snapping me out of my long reverie. I turned to face the mercenary and smiled. I have a mission for you if you are ready. Slade rolled his head around slowly, his neck popping with a loud crack. His dark eyes glinted with an air of confidence as he raised an eyebrow in silent challenge. His lips curled into a smirk as he spoke in a deep, powerful voice. When haven't I before? What's the objective? I need you to steal Ray Palmer's research about molecular alteration, I replied. Slade raised an eyebrow and crossed his arms, a sly smile curling up the corner of his lips. You study in the same place he works at, he said. I do, which is why it's best if I keep my distance from such missions, wouldn't you agree? I replied. Rule number 1 of illegal activities, never hit a place you have a strong connection with if you can avoid it. Very well, Slade nodded. I will have what you want by the end of the month. Having nothing more to add, I threw a thumb-sized USB drive with a flick of my wrist toward the mercenary and Slade plucked it from the air before it could reach him. Load the program within the USB, I said, pointing at the drive. It'll keep your digital footprints invisible. For as long as nobody really looks. Slade carefully grabbed the thumb drive, squeezing it tight in his palm. He glanced around the room one last time, then spun on his heel and exited, not stopping until he was out of sight. Slade was many things, but inefficient wasn't one of them. Chapter 240, Author Note. Just to let you guys know I'm not dead or anything. Just taking a small break, so to speak. I will return very soon. Like in a week. Chapter 241, Author Note, Important Information. I have been writing for the past few days, during my break. Getting enough backup chapters for both DC, Don't Utter a Word and Marvel, Gamer Path. But that's not the only thing I have done this past few days. As I was working on DC and Marvel, an idea for a new project came to mind, one that I intended to push for later. Alas, for those that enjoy writing, it may not come as a surprise that the longer I tried to ignore the idea, the more it fascinated. It got to the point I wrote over 27 chapters in less than a week. And I don't mean small chapters. I mean big chunky chapters, between 2,000 to 3,000 words each. Surprisingly, working with that new idea pushed my head out of my creative block, which had been the reason I hadn't been able to update as much, both for Marvel, and as of lately, DC. Just today I wrote 5 chapters for DC alone. Each one being around 2,000 words. I now find myself writing bigger and bigger chapters, so that's good for those that have always been looking for larger chapters. Now, the questions you might be asking. Corn, if you are working on a third idea/project, what does that mean for the novels you are updating on and off? Well, the answer to that is rather simple, and complicated at the same time, so bear with me for a moment. Unlike Marvel, DC is almost ending. There's one arc left after the one you guys currently are in, and after that, well, the novel will be completed. Marvel on the other hand is farther away from the ending than that. I would say for Marvel we are at 2 to 3 arcs away from reaching the finale. It's leaning towards 2 arcs more than 3, seeing I might just integrate one of the arcs into another, seeing both touch similar subjects and goals. Now, what does this mean as far as updates go? I pondered about that for a bit. And came to the following conclusion. I will wait all of March to stack enough chapters for Marvel, Gamer Math, in order to start a weekly schedule with that one, seeing I'm currently beginning to update the former on Patreon once a week. As for DC, Don't Utter a Word. I was considering on doing the same, but starting now with a weekly update that could grow into more based on public polls and how many chapters one had stacked. For example, if I had 40 chapters or more, I have no problem posting 10 in a single day just to satiate your chapter thirst. I'm not near 40, but I feel I will reach that within the next month or the following. But Corn. Does that mean you will stop daily updates as a whole? No, this is where my new project, the one that basically healed me from the author's block, comes into view. While it's true I'm no longer blocked by creative problems, my muse so to speak is the other project, being the one my mind is currently working on even when I don't want to. I mean, as a testament to this I wrote 27 chapters, in less than a week, totaling a bit over 79,000 words. That's how inspired I was by it. That being said, I don't want to stop updating DC or Marvel. Other projects are on hold sure, but those three are the ones I work with on a daily basis, more so with DC than Marvel. Seeing DC is reaching its climax before the end, the inspiration isn't really fading. As for the new project, I wish to start posting for it tomorrow. It has been approved by my Patreons, who so far had enjoyed it all. Fairy Tale, Shinigami. A normal human dies and reincarnates in the world of Fairy Tale, years before the story begins. The MC is around Laxus's age. As for his powers, well, he was gifted with the powers of a Shinigami, including an Asachi of his own. He isn't aware of that at first but comes to discover this as the story progresses. I plan to start posting for it tomorrow, with a mass release of 9 chapters for a total of 18,098 words. I will also post chapters for DC this week, so don't worry. You can check my Patreon link, without the need to subscribe to see how many updates I have for DC just today. You might not be able to read them if you don't subscribe, but you will see the titles and stuff. The point being, I am quite invested on both sides, just trying to take it easier with DC as it nears the end. Which is around 40 chapters, and this is a very close estimate of how many chapters we have left. I just finished this arc today, meaning I'm starting to work on the last arc, tomorrow. Anyway, leave your comments or questions in the comments section. Chapter 242, Fairy Tale, Shinigami. Novel up. Give it a read, and don't forget to share your thoughts. DC will be updated this Saturday, with 2 to 4 chapters.